Career criminal Carlito Brigante is released from prison, free at last, and with big plans to go straight. But the ghosts of Carlito's past threaten to derail his dreams as he gets dragged down by the thugs, pimps and pushers of 70s New York. Carlito's way re-teamed De Palma and Pacino together again 10 years after making Scarface. It didn't set the cinematic world on fire in the 90s, but has slowly gained a die-hard fan base with a strong argument for it being De Palma's finest work. My name's Luke, and with me are two guys who've got a big future if they can live past next week. It is Westy.
Go ahead and kill me, you cocksucker.
And Matt.
Ooh, what's that smell? Sasso, man. That Sasso used to be Ron.
All the right movies are completely rehabilitated, reinvigorated, reassimilated, and finally going to be relocated to 70s New York. Hi everyone, and welcome to All the Right Movies, the JP Morgan of podcasts on classic and hit films.
First time I've heard that.
Very good. We think we're big time this week. We're talking about De Palma's gangster redemption story, Carlito's Way.
Yeah.
Ooh, a very big one.
Huge.
Before we get pulled close to the ground, we're going to let you know about the incredible benefits available to you by becoming a patron of All the Right Movies.
Exactly.
You may have heard us mention this in the past, but what you're listening to now is our classic podcast, the 20 most recent episodes of which are available for everyone to hear. But as of now, there are 74 other classic podcasts that are available only to patrons of ADRM. That is a big number.
That's big time.
Yeah. Big time. You think you're big time?
You're going to listen. Big time.
So on top of those 74 classic podcasts, we've created 58 other podcasts exclusive only to our patrons.
Yeah.
So if maths is your strong point, you'll know that is 132 episodes that you can listen to if you support us.
Yes.
Wow.
Big,
Lot of content.
big.
Lot of content.
Yeah.
And that grows all the time with the release of our monthly double feature podcast exclusive to our patrons.
Yeah.
Now, there are a number of ways you can get a hold of these podcasts. Our classic podcast archive is available on Apple Podcasts. You just need to hit that subscribe button. Easy as pie.
Yeah.
It is.
No excuses there, really.
Easy as apple pie.
Oh, very nice.
Oh, there you go, man.
Jesus
That's
Christ.
what you're here for, man.
Now we've started.
Our classic podcast archive and all the exclusive patron-produced podcasts are now available on Podbean as well.
Right.
So you can search All the Right Movies on Podbean, click the button that says Be a Patron, or it might just be an icon with a $sign on it. Either way, it's next to the follow button.
Right.
Right.
Good to know.
Or to get all of our podcasts and more besides, like voting on the films we cover, being able to ask us questions that we'll answer on the show, and being part of our Patreon community, you can become an ATRM Patreon supporter at patreon.com/All the Right Movies.
Absolutely.
Yes, you can.
A lot of options. So if you can support us, it'd be much appreciated if you could choose just one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, just one.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Yes, thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you, people.
Okay, back down to it. This one was my pick, so why do I want to talk about Carlito's Way?
I'd love to know.
I think you guys know the answer.
Yeah.
It's not that I've kept it a secret. Now, I am well aware that this film isn't perfect. It's very much a...
Starting on a caveat there.
Yeah.
Starting on a caveat.
Nothing like it.
Okay. Yeah.
Get all the bad things out first.
Okay, good. Good.
It's very much a well-worn movie story, you know, nothing new from a narrative point of view. Former bad guy trying and struggling to go straight.
Yeah.
There are a lot of issues, I think, with Pacino's accent.
Yeah.
And I think there is some miscasting in the film, and I'll go into that later.
Yes.
So there's a few negatives to contend there with, straight from the off.
Okay.
None of which will be apparent in my score at the end of the show. Okay, I'm just going to
Fantastic.
flag
Get
that out
the
right
way
now.
Yeah. That's all right. Don't
Okay.
forgotten about.
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
Out of sight, out of mind.
And the reason for that is this film is absolute dynamite for me. Catnip.
Yeah.
It couldn't be more up my alley if it wanted to be.
Nope.
Pacino on red hot form, great beard, great hair, great leather trench coat. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in New York in the 70s, my favourite place, favourite era.
Yeah.
De Palma directing to operatic levels of swagger. Disco music, salsa music, it's got it all. Sean Penn at his sleazy best. And if that wasn't enough, you've got Luis Guzman and John Leguizamo, two of my all-time favourite actors. Need I say any more?
No?
That's why I want to talk about it.
Okay.
What about you, Matt? Why do you want to talk about Carlito's Way?
Well, it's all right, isn't it? I mean,
It's fantastic, Matt.
how am I supposed to follow up that enthusiasm?
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's a really interesting one because we've talked about Patreon, and as our patrons know, we have talked about this on our double feature episode, which it won.
A former winner.
Former winner. Wasn't a deep dive, just a gut reaction to it. And I think I said back then it isn't a film I knew massively well. It just wasn't in my orbit for a long period of time. But I did really enjoy it when we came to it on double feature. I enjoyed it so much that I've not watched it since.
Brilliant.
Until it won this poll. So
brilliant.
It's not one where I have a big connection or big backstory to it. So all I'll say is I think De Palma from the late 70s up until the mid 90s, I think he had one of the most interesting, flamboyant runs a director's ever had, and Carlito's Way is a big part of that.
Yes, good. Okay, that sounds like positive to me, Matt. I'll take that.
Beaming smiles there. Like.
Nervous, man. Really nervous about how this is going to play out.
Yeah. It's like I'm having me child assessed at school.
Yeah.
And Westy, you and Carlito's Way, why do you want to talk about it?
I mean, it's not a regular one for me. It never has been. It always kind of flies under the radar. And when I do watch it, I kind of realise how good it is. But at the same time, it's really forgettable. Like, as the scenes go past, I kind of just go, oh, right, yeah. And then another really great scene happens, and then I just forget about it immediately. It seems very claustrophobic. It doesn't seem like it's on a big stage. It could be a much bigger film. It seems a little cartoonish in places, but I think that's down to De Palma's direction. We'll talk about that.
I agree.
A little bit overplayed by Pacino, which we'll talk about that. But on the whole, it is an enjoyable film, but I just don't know if it works in its own separate ways. I don't know if it just doesn't gel enough for me and feels a little bit too cartoonish, a little bit too rushed in places and a little bit slow in others. So I guess it's just the overall tone that De Palma's bringing to this, and whether or not that seems confused for me. It's an enjoyable watch, but at the same time, I feel more confused by the end than I do rewarded, if that makes sense.
Right, okay, well, this is going to be an interesting conversation to be had, an interesting podcast. Okay, Carlito's Way was written by David Koepp, directed by Brian De Palma, and produced by Willie Bear and Michael and Martin Bregman for Epic Productions, and distributed into theaters by Universal Pictures on the 12th of November 1993. Filmed on location in New York City, it stars Al Pacino as Carlito Brigante, Sean Penn as Davy Kleinfeld. Davy Kleinfeld!
Carlito, huh?
And Penelope Ann Miller as Gail. Didn't even bother to give her a surname.
No, just Gail.
Just Gail.
Gail.
Outrageous.
Generic name.
And there's a talented supporting cast which includes John Leguizamo, Luis Guzman, Viggo Mortensen, and James Rebhorn.
Yeah.
Okay, here come the pain. We're headed down Carlito's Way.
The beginning.
Tragedy from the start of Carlito's Way as the familiar figure of Al Pacino is gunned down and while being stretchered from the scene takes us back to when he got out of the joint. Matt, it's over to you to start us off.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that opening court scene because there's just not that many actors that are as good at grandstanding as Pacino is. And I think the thing about Pacino in this, it's just before his performances start to get to OTT. He's on the road to it. He's definitely going there, but he's not quite arrived at it yet. There's still a little bit of a measured performance. And Carlito absolutely adores the spotlight here, and he takes it as his moment to shine. You know, he admits he was already a mean little bastard while his mother was alive, so he knows who he is. He's got self-awareness. He's not trying to find excuses for himself. But straight away, you're so taken with him. He's got so much confidence about himself, so much charisma. And he's really funny when he says, and without further, to do.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Yeah.
Love it.
Really funny when he's trying to think of as many words beginning with re as he can, as you said earlier.
I love that.
Reinvigorated, reassimilated. And you can see his mind spinning. What's another one? What's another one? He's milking it for as much as he can. And it's a really flamboyant moment from him. Even though you've just met him, you feel really happy for him that he's got this moment.
Yeah, he's over the moon.
He's over the moon. You can see Kleinfeld can barely keep his laughter in, which is such a good contrast to how bored the judge is by this performance. Who's to say, okay, Mr. Brigandi, you're not accepting an award. I've got 56 other cases after you. Let's just get on with it. So, it's a really good introduction to the character.
Do you think it's a little bit of a nod to his performance in Scent of a Woman as well that he won the Oscar for? Well, he didn't win the Oscar yet, but do you think that was a little bit of a nod to it?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, he's out. I mean, his accent in this moment, he sounds almost like Benoit Blanc from Knives Out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And his delivery is crazy. It's like, I change, but it didn't take no 30 years like your honor thought, but only 5.
Your Honor.
He's all over the place.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
They were able to film this court sequence on location at the Supreme Court downtown Manhattan with ease because it was Edwin Torres's courtroom. He is the author of the 2 novels in which this is based.
Right,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
Well, the sequence after the courtroom is magic for me. It dips us right into the thick of the action. You know, we know where we're at with that Latin music blaring in the club.
Yeah.
It's a lot of exposition to set us up for the rest of the film, but Carlito is explaining his big plans to go down to the Bahamas and rent cars, and Kleinfeld loves that.
Yeah.
He's all over it. Got it all figured out.
Yeah.
But also this scene serves to strengthen our opinion of Carlito and Kleinfeld's relationship. They are all over each other like a cheap suit.
Yeah.
And considering Carlito's been away for 5 years, the women that they're with, they don't get a look in.
No, they don't. You can dance with him if you want. Brilliant.
But it's a mutual thing. All of Kleinfeld's clients came from Carlito, and Carlito was buried and under the ground before Kleinfeld worked his magic. So that bond is very, very strong.
Yeah.
I mean, if Kleinfeld was abroad, Carlito would marry him.
Brilliant line, that, yeah.
It's great. But there's no way you watch this and not think that Kleinfeld is as slippery as an eel, just from his exterior alone.
Yeah. Just them little looks he gives in the courtroom as well, absolutely disgusting, like really cocky. Looks up and he's like, ooh.
Trying to stifle his laughter.
Yeah.
And then after this, Carlito on the streets doing a little memory lane, kicking it with his little cousin as he stumbles across an old friend from the barrio, Pachanga.
Yeah.
And now we're talking Pachanga, Luis Guzman.
Yeah.
Looking exactly like he does in all of his films.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Sounding exactly like he does in all of his films.
Yeah.
And I'm lapping it up. I love Guzman in anything, obviously.
Yeah.
You know this.
Yes.
I've discussed it at length.
Yes.
I know.
Yes, we have.
Yes. In the screenplay, Pachanga's lines were written phonetically in heavy accented slang. Some of the crew were of Latin descent and were deeply offended by this.
Unsurprising.
Coet rewrote the dialogue in English, and Luis Guzman was directed to deliver the lines in a deep accent and asked to improve some slang.
Right, okay. So just do your best Guzman.
Yeah,
And
basically.
you're under a winner, basically.
Stop not being Guzman.
And this scene puts me in mind of Scarface a little bit.
I know what you mean.
The streets are fizzing with energy.
Yeah.
And the film's got, references all over the place.
Yeah.
Carlito's nightclub is called El Paraíso, which is the name of the food stand where Tony Montana works before he makes it big time.
Yeah.
It's directed by De Palma, stars Pacino, produced by Martin Bregman. And I've always seen this as a kind of unofficial sequel to Scarface.
Yeah.
Like a career criminal who, he dies in Scarface, but if the ending was changed a little bit, he went away and he came back as a reformed man.
Yeah.
And 5 actors in this film are also in Scarface, including Al Israel, who plays mob boss Rolando Rivas, who we see after this scene.
Yes.
That Carlito sits down with.
Yes.
And Angel Salazar, who plays Walberto, that little fellow who comes over shouting, "Heavy duty."
Oh, yeah. That was brilliant. Didn't have a clue who you meant until you put the impression in there. I was like, oh, that guy. Yeah. Heavy duty.
Heavy duty. In the screenplay, he's described as ridiculously overdressed, jewelry dripping from every conceivable appendage.
Yeah.
And Westy, you've got a scene that once you've seen it, you're going to give up your religious beliefs.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for me, this is the best scene in the film. I think.
Agreed.
I really do think so, because it's just pure De Palma and it's so engaging and it's so powerful and it's just really well played out as a set piece. Is it "You're dead, Willie"? He's in there from Ghost.
Yeah,
he's fantastic.
Yeah, Willie Lopez is in there.
He is, But it's the tension just from seeing the door open slightly, bathrooms out of order. Yeah, I can wait another week. Come back, we'll have it fixed for you. Great little bit of dialogue, that bit. Great lovely. Back and forth. We're playing 8-ball. Carlito knows exactly what's going on straight away. We as an audience know what's going on straight away, but De Palma stretches this out until it almost snaps. It's just the little bits that you put in there just because it's pure cinema. It's like, well, what else can you do to ramp the tension up? He's already done it visually. So then he says, turn this song up, man. I love this song. So the music goes up. And you go, right, to another level.
Do.
But it's a song that you just think, I want to listen to that. So at the same time, you're quite distracted by it. It's not a song with any kind of foreboding. No, it's just a really upbeat song where you're just distracted. And I think that works really well. I think when he just goes to do the trick shot and, you know, he's winding it up when he's like, you're going to change your religious beliefs. But the way the camera moves around from as if it's on the table and does that circular motion as Carlito's going around explaining what it is. It took us 6 months to learn this shot. It's just like, this is magic. It's just fucking wonderful, and you're just so engaged in this whole sequence. I think that the set design's massive. I think it's fucking brilliant. It all just works really well. The girls in the scene, they're trying to take the shot, and she's all over them, and they're dancing, and you just think that's just something so unhinged about this whole situation.
It's so uneasy.
It really is. But it's just then the trick shot happens, and then you get that really Brian De Palma moment where the guy's just reflected in the glasses. I watched this, but I just go, oh, calm down, Brian.
And the guy walking is just so obvious. I've got a knife in front of me. Can you see this, everyone?
With his little finger out. Little chop. It's just like, it's absolutely outrageous. It's just pure De Palma. He's like, how can I make this ridiculously big? Right, okay, and this is really theatrical, and it plays out like a stage show. But then when it kicks off, it really kicks off. Your boss is dead and so are you. You're like, fuck. And then, you know, Carlito's shooting, people are going down. That trick shot's amazing, and then it just explodes. And then it's another wonderful bit with no bullets. And then the camera's on the fucking ceiling. And again, calm down, Brian. Where else can I put the camera? Put it up there, put it down there, put it through there, fucking put it everywhere. I'm surprised it wasn't in the cooler as he's looking for the beer, just like on top of the camera.
Way down in the bottom.
Way down in the bottom. Will you split that up there, man? He just put his beer on one side and he's on the other. But I just love that high angle because you see everything and you know exactly what's going on, and he opens the clip and you see that the gun's empty and he's like, and then the light goes out and then you get that incredible shot where it's just beautifully lit. But he's just a reflection of his past self because you get him in the mirror. You get him doing that and can't look at himself. He can't look at the situation that he's in. He doesn't want to turn to himself. So he has to walk away from his reflection. He has to walk away from who he thinks he is and go back into his past. And this is where this all stems from.
Brilliant.
And it's just beautifully done visually. I honestly think it's the best scene, not only in the film, but I think it's one of the best scenes that De Palma has ever directed.
I don't disagree at all, Westy. Yeah. I love this scene, completely love it. It's an all-timer for me. It's magnificent.
Yeah.
The tension that's built, holy shit, masterful stuff.
So on the viewing of this, Universal wanted the scene to be trimmed down. De Palma was like, yeah, no problem, took it away and extended it. And then... But what he did is he used more edits just to build the tension, so it cuts backwards and forwards, so it actually feels like it's faster, therefore shorter. Yeah. So then the suits watched it again and they were like, that's brilliant now. That's got a lot more of a pace to it. That's beautiful. It's much, much better shorter. De Palma's like, yep, of course it is. It's fucking longer. By about 10 minutes, I would have thought.
It's longer, idiots.
Idiots. It's just faster cut.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Great. It is, yeah. I mean, it's a super long sequence, isn't it?
It is.
Allegedly, Pacino played professional pool in Nevada for a whole month for this scene.
And he hits the ball once.
Yeah, he hits the ball once. And it's not in one take.
No. Balanced on short. It couldn't be any easier. It's off the table. It's like hitting a golf ball off a massive tee and spending like a year with Nick Faldo. It's absolutely pointless.
Faldo?
Yeah. Doesn't go Tiger Woods or Patrick Harrington.
Tiger Woods.
Faldo.
Nick Faldo.
Faldo.
Eric Bristol.
I think that was wasted time, to be honest.
Yeah, well, that would have been absolutely.
Yeah.
And the first scene scheduled to be shot was the Grand Central finale, but they had to change the shooting schedule around because Pacino showed up on set in crutches, and so the pool room shootout, that ended up being the first one shot instead.
Yeah, I think when he's kind of moving sideways and he's shooting at Kizkea and he's shooting back Willie Lopez, it looks as though he's uneasy on his feet.
Yeah. But that works for the sequence. Like he's out of practice. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a sequence. Great choice, Westy. Suspenseful storytelling at its best. With his ill-gotten gains, Carlito arranges with Kleinfeld to go in on the club with him, and that's where we're picking up the action. Mm-hmm. Matt,
yes.
Over to you again.
I mean, we've started already, but there are just so many moments in the summer you go, that's just pure De Palma, that's just absolute 100% unfiltered De Palma. And I think when he meets Sasso at the club, that is 100% ridiculous. Pure De Palma. Like,
yeah.
When Carlito enters that club and in a wanna, it snakes its way through the ground floor, onto the stairs, up the stairs, pans around while on the stairs, takes everything in. And it's only when the waiter looks directly into the camera and nods that I realise this is a POV shot. This is absolutely insane.
It's outrageous.
It's outrageous when you consider how many extras are in this scene. How many actors have to hit their mark at precisely the right time, and at the same time as the camera has to hit its mark. It blows my mind how much detail he's crammed into it. Little moments like the woman in the DJ booth just dancing away to herself. The guy at the table getting chucked out because he's too drunk or he's been giving someone a bit of lip. All these little moments have all got to be in sync. And watching this again, and I'll mention this a few times because it really made me appreciate this must have been a huge influence on Paul Thomas Anderson for Boogie Nights.
Yeah.
Because this is that opening sequence from Boogie Nights, isn't it?
Yeah, more or less.
I agree.
Really
I was going to say that, yeah.
Really is, yeah. And I just love Sasso as a character. Thinks it's hilarious how he's called Ron now. Just a big boom and laugh at that. I mean, it's not that funny. Really isn't that funny.
No, it's not. I don't quite get it either.
I don't quite get it.
Why is it Ron?
Yeah, exactly. But, Carlito just cuts through it all. He's only there for business. It is a very funny scene. That's why, I took my quote at the top from it. And just Carlito thought, what I'm trying to do, Sasso, Ron, just really belittling.
Yeah, it is fantastic. I wouldn't be surprised if that's why Luis Guzman was cast in Boogie Nights as well, Matt.
No, good point.
Because of this film.
Yeah, very likely, yeah.
Vest as well.
Vest, of course.
Yes, of course.
Expanding girth.
Yes, expanding girth. Yep, no care for it. Brilliant.
Classic Guzman.
Yeah.
Letting it all hang out. George Porcel plays Sasso in here. Sorry, Ron. Porcel was considered one of Argentina's greatest comic actors of the 20th century. Martin Bregman saw him on Spanish TV and got in touch for him to audition, but he didn't speak a word of English.
Right.
And he learned his lines phonetically and went to deliver them by learning the last few words of Pacino's lines.
Right.
This was the only American movie he made, and it was his last ever movie performance of his career.
Oh, wow. Didn't know that, yeah.
But Pacino struggled to act alongside him, said he couldn't get an actor's response out of him because he was basically just reading things, saying words he didn't know existed.
Also in the club, we have a great introduction to a character that's going to come back later and change the whole game. And it's actually, I'm going to talk about two introductions that aren't necessarily back to back. There's a scene in between them, but it's the introduction to Benny Blanco from the Bronx.
Benny Blanco.
Brilliant. This is brilliant. It's almost like him talking to Pacino as an actor, being like, I've just started my game. Like, I can have 2 minutes of your time, Mr. Pacino.
Yeah.
Oh, just 2 minutes, Mr. Brigante.
But he is wonderful. He has a real presence. He's sleazy, confident, memorable. And it's just the way Pacino deals with them and just as fucking kids. They think they just move a couple of ounces and then they're just big time and the big shots and all this kind of, and he dismisses it. And it's really important for the audience to understand that first meeting and where they're coming from. And he's automatically putting them down, just underrating them. Forgot the drive and energy he had as a kid that age and what he would have been prepared to do. And he's just disrespectful. And I think he's very respectful to a lot of people in this film. And the people he is disrespectful to, it comes back and bites him every single time. But the people he is super respectful to never really works out for him because it's just his old life trying to get him back in. So he's trying to ignore who he was, which you can't do if you've built that kind of persona and you're back in the same place.
The foundations are already there,
exactly, and he's an influence and he has to accept. I mean, the brilliant thing about the writing, which we'll get into, but I'll touch on it here, what Coep does is, he got out of prison 5 years. After 5 years, he's supposed to do 30. This is still his sentence. He's still being punished for what he's done, but he's just not in prison. It feels very claustrophobic. Everything's on a long lens. He's just in the middle of everything. It feels like he still is in prison. He can't get out. And I think the next scene I'm going to talk about when he meets Gail is the first time he feels like he's out of prison. And he's so placid and he's so nice and he's so calm and he's so respectful of her space and her behavior. And he just kind of goes up on the street and he's happy. And he's just, here I am. What was it like inside? A lot of push-ups, a lot of wasted time. It's just, they're really nice lines that get the point across. And what De Palma does, again, with just a dialogue sequence, they open up in that coffee shop and it's just this incredible push. The real reason is, though, because he's so visual, it's to come into their relationship, and we're slowly pushed into their relationship. Look how quickly we're pushed into the relationship with Benny. It's slammed into close-ups. Bang, 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 in your face. This starts wide. and lets us just develop the relationship and see both of the characters. We can judge it and we'll get in, and then it goes to these incredible over the shoulders, just these really quick cuts, and you're just into the conversation. You can see Carlito of who he wants to be, not who he is.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, ultimately he's doomed.
Yeah.
I think Benny is the ghosts of his past. That is, I mean, Sasso says it, but that's the ghost of his past. That is Carlito when he was coming up.
Yeah.
And Leguizamo, he actually turned down the part of Benny Blanco 4 times before he said yes. And that's because he didn't feel the part was big enough. And when they came to him the final time with it, they basically said to him, look, this is the last time we'll come to you because we've got Benicio del Toro, who we're also looking at for the role. So out of spite, Leguizamo did take it. But because he'd already worked with De Palma on Casualties of War in 89, he was allowed to add to the character.
Right, nice.
Yeah, he said, De Palma let me improvise my ass off. He said, I created the character, all this bizarre backstory that he's a go-getter who can't wait to meet Pacino. I think that was the first time I really felt I'd found myself in movies, and I'll always love De Palma because Carlito's Way is where I found myself in film.
Yeah. I think his improvised lines are the best lines that he delivers.
Yeah, red suit as well. I mean, looks amazing.
Yeah, it's kicking that. It is kicking.
Holy shit, it's original.
It is original. It is original. Imagine if I wore that. I'd look like Mortensen and Captain Fantastic.
Oh, I'd love to see that. Westy Fantastic.
We saw that out.
Benny, I mean, he's such a bastard, but he's amazing in the role. So much so that I've agreed with my wife today that if we get a dog, we're calling him Benny Blanco from the Bronx.
Oh, very nice.
Amazing.
Nice. Yeah.
And I'm holding her to that.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to get him a little red suit as well?
That would be amazing. A little tiny mustache.
Yeah. I'm glad it's not a child.
Yeah.
Glad she's not pregnant.
Yeah. She's late. Oh, shit. It's Benny Blanco from the Bronx. See him.
Doesn't have quite the same ring to it, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Does it?
No.
Yeah, and Leguizamo, although he was very thankful for De Palma putting him in this film, in more recent times he's expressed a bit of reservations at the casting choices. In 2022, he said, "It's an odd experience to be a Latin man in a Latin story written by a Latin man, and the lead guy's a white guy pretending to be Puerto Rican."
Yeah.
He said it was surreal. I'm a Latin guy and I didn't want to play another drug dealer. I was just kind of sick of that routine.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to do what you do to get into the industry, I suppose.
I guess
but
so.
you look back on it and think, you know, it's probably not the greatest representation.
No, definitely not. But it's a sign of the times in the early 90s.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the scene that I want to talk about is a pretty spectacular scene. It is when Kleinfeld goes to see Tony T at Rikers Island.
Yes. Lovely.
A big, long take tracks Kleinfeld towards Rikers and pulls way out into the East River.
Calm down, Brian.
Now, how did Brian De Palma pull that off? It's mind-blowing. How did he do that?
Why did he do that?
Why did he do it? It's exhilarating stuff. I really do think that. And then if you contrast the Kleinfeld walking in compared to when he's walking out, when he's walking in, he's the smuggest man on the planet. His chest is puffed out. He's looking confidently around going in. And when he comes out, he's a shell of his former self, throwing up and looking out towards his face. And the reason for that is that he gets stomped on by Tony T.
He does, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is unsurprising because this guy is terrifying.
He is, yeah.
Despite sounding like he's breathing his last breaths, I think that adds to it. He brings kind of like an icy chill of death to Kleinfeld's door.
Yeah.
And, you know, is ultimately responsible for him dying in the end.
Mm-hmm.
But Kleinfeld is obviously responsible, ultimately because he did steal £1 million from this man, who at this time you don't know that he did, but you really wouldn't be surprised if he did steal $1 million from him.
Yeah.
Why would you do it?
Because he thinks he can get away with it. He's just cocky. And he thinks he can get away with it. He's in Rikers.
And he's at death's door.
Yeah, exactly. So he thinks he's going to get away with it. Just, you know, it's one of them things, pride before the fall, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so. But the language that Tony T uses, horrific imagery, when he threatens to dump him into the river, he says, imagine what it's going to feel like sliding around down the bottom with them eels and the crabs crawling out your eyeballs.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ. And the contract's already down on you, pal. The guys, the guns, the lime pit's already dug. Oh, Jesus, I love that.
Yeah, brilliant.
What a scene between two horrific characters.
Yeah. Tony T was played by Frank Minucci, and he was a real-life former mob enforcer who confessed to beating people who owed him money and dragging people down the street tied to his car. I can fucking totally believe that. 100%.
Yeah, it's an outrageous story. He was set up to do a mob hit, which would put him in the good graces of the Gambino family and send him up the ladder.
Right.
But at the time, he'd found love and wanted to get out. He managed to get out by raising $250,000 by selling everything he owned as a payoff.
Right.
Wow.
After he got married and became a father, he eventually became an evangelical preacher.
Wow.
Right.
Unbelievable stuff.
Great change.
And then returned to this kind of persona as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, brilliant.
Right, with ease.
Yeah.
So a blistering first act, stuff full of memorable characters and big scenes.
Yeah.
The director.
The man at the helm is Brian De Palma, of course. Not the first time we've talked about him on the podcast, hopefully not the last either. He'd had a long and distinguished career up to this point with great films in a number of genres throughout the decades, but he came back to the gangster well for Carlito's Way. Westy, what do you think of his work on this film?
I mean, it's thick, isn't it? It's laid on pretty thick, isn't it?
It is.
He's got a lot of colours on his palette, let's be honest, and he's not scared of showing all of them.
Not at all.
I don't know if he just shows too much. You can't have too much of a good thing. I mean, there's a lot going on here, so much so that you don't really appreciate it at times. Like Matt said there, you know, that opening shot going into the club, it's so good. And so theatrical and so well played out that you don't really appreciate it or notice it. It's hardly the track shot in Goodfellas. In Boogie Nights, they were like, right, we're going to take that, but we're going to make you stop and appreciate it. And I think what he does is he's so good at creating all of these camera movements. He's so good at blocking. He's so good at where he's going to place the characters and how he's going to balance everything that you kind of forget what you're watching is an actual technical masterpiece, really. He uses split diopters for a laugh.
Yeah.
Really. It doesn't he? And this is the best use of split diopters he's ever done. And he's done it before where you can see them. But when the girls are dancing and the guys are talking behind, it's just a perfect line.
You can't see
exactly
them in
where
this
it's going to blur. But and they are really good visual aids to tell the story. But I think it's like a pick and mix with just too many sweets. There's just too much sugar in it. There's just too much to take in. And I think the balance that he does get right is the balance of all of these strong characters, because somebody could have easily got lost underneath Pacino's performance, underneath Leguizamo's performance. They could have got lost underneath Penn's performance. And I wish he just stuck to the characters and then made the camera movements back up the characters. But it seems like he's doing two separate things and they don't quite work hand in hand. Like the camera movements don't back up what the characters are doing. It's just flashy for the sake of it being flashy. It's over-stylized for the sake of it being stylized. Sometimes it really works, but sometimes it really doesn't. You know, there's just absolutely no need for Carlito to go onto a rooftop in the rain with a bin over his head to look through the window of Gail dancing. And it's like West Side Story or some shit, just because he wants to do it. There's a million ways to do that, and he doesn't have to do it. It's so theatrical, and it's just so over the top, and it's just so overly sentimental. It's just really creepy. It's a really weird thing to do.
It is a little creepy. I agree with that for certain.
But then just makes it into this really like over sentimental, really big push-ins. The scene's too long. Yes, I know the rain's coming down. Yes, I can hear the music. Yes, I know what you're trying to say. Just cut that by about 5 minutes. It's wonderfully done, but you can't have too much of a good thing.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, fair points, Westy.
Yeah.
But contrary to what you're saying, I don't think you can have too much of a good thing.
Okay.
For me.
That's fair enough.
Because the way that De Palma directs this film is the reason why it's one of my favourites, the reason why I regard him so highly. It's pure filmmaking to me, the choices that De Palma makes. It's not just locked off boring images. Let's just get the shot in the can and move on. We've got these huge sweeping shots clocking in at minutes and minutes at a time.
Yeah.
Stuff full of excitement and intrigue. And because the takes are so long, for me, there's a real sense of unease that anything could happen. I'm astounded at how he's managed to do that train sequence. The setups with Pacino running through each cart and the guys moving behind them seamlessly. The camera moving backwards and forwards, capturing everything so clearly in one take. A moving train.
Yeah.
Come on.
Internals and externals.
What the fuck?
It's inside, it's outside, it's pulling off. Right, okay. I'll talk about that later on because that's one of my favourites.
Crazy.
It is insane.
I'll even go to one of my least favourite scenes in the film where Carlito goes to Gale's. He's got some cheesecake.
Huh?
Joe Cocker is blaring and he breaks the door down.
God.
Awful, really. That is, it's a very uncomfortable scene for me. But I think De Palma makes it work with this intoxicating circular shot of Carlito and Gail intertwined in this unbridled passion that's been on ice for 5 years. It really brings you into that tragically doomed romance of it all.
Yeah. But when Michael Bay does it, I don't like that.
When has Michael Bay done that?
Bad Boys. Bad Boys 2. Bad Boys 3, Bad Boys 4.
I haven't seen Bad Boys 2. I also think what he does quite beautifully in the film is use all of the frame. You mentioned, Westy, that classic split diopter that you don't even notice. It's in the courthouse at the start. It's in the club. But there are details all over the film in the background of shots, like when the FBI are tailing Carlito and he's talking to Gail and she says that she's late. They don't just show up out of nowhere. They're there from the start of the scene.
Yeah.
And like when Carlito is running towards the train, towards Gail, you might miss it from first watch, but there's someone running by his side in a hat and trench coat, which turns out to be Benny Blanco from the Bronx.
Yeah.
Lovely little details that are quite easy to overlook.
Yeah. Beam and smile from Pacino as well. It's heartbreaking, that.
Oh, God.
Oh,
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
Let's cover that later, if we must.
Oh, my God. Luke's going to lose it, everybody. It's normally Matt who cries. This is gonna be good.
I think this is just magical movie making for me. De Palma always excites me as a filmmaker, probably more so on Carlito than anything else he's done, even Blowout.
Wow.
And Matt, what do you think of De Palma here?
It's very, very ostentatious, isn't it?
You're going to see Austin Powers there.
Bit of bossing over at the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
Judo chop!
Machine gun jab, please.
And I miss those, baby.
No.
Wow, I didn't think we'd get an Austin Powers riff.
No, ostentatious, because the thing is, you can look at the bare bones of this story and it sounds like it's going to be really dour and grim. And I think what De Palma does is he does just elevate everything with this incredible style that he has throughout. And like I said at the top, during this period, there just wasn't anyone else quite like De Palma. You know, not even Spielberg. When Spielberg puts like sequences together, he never holds them like De Palma does. And he's so in control of his craft here. Like, you know, we've already said it, but that shot of Kleinfeld arriving at Rikers, there is absolutely no need for that shot to be as extravagant as it is. There's just no need. There's no need. It's just mental. It's just an establishing shot. Like, don't do that. Like, you don't have to.
You don't
But
have
he
to.
does.
At the end of the film.
Yeah. You know, the Sasso sequence I've just talked about, the sequence later on when Carlito leads Gail onto the dance floor and it tracks around them. And watching again, I just realised how many reflective surfaces are in that club where you think you're going to have to cut because aren't you going to get the reflections of the camera crew in there at some point? You've got to cut around it. But no, keeps it in a one because it's a throwaway moment and he wants to elevate it. It's not just the big moments as well, like that confrontation between Carlito and Benny when he throws Benny out of the club. All of a sudden you get these massive close-ups of them bathed in red because of the lights outside. You don't get those kind of close-ups anywhere else in the film.
Nope.
He's just throwing
Which is reflected at the end, isn't it? Because they go to red at the end. Yeah, brilliant.
Just at the end.
Brilliant.
You know, it shouldn't work. And yet he's putting it all together. And he somehow, at the same time, he doesn't sacrifice the emotional undercurrent just to make it look incredible. He ties it all together somehow. But like I say, it's just very, very ostentatious.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, baby.
Fucking diapers, baby. Surprisingly, De Palma wasn't first choice on the hot seat of Carlito's Way. Both John Mackenzie and Abel Ferreira were considered. Mackenzie directed All the Right Movies' favourite, The Long Good Friday, in 1980.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Not much else, though, after that, which is a shame. I would love to have seen him have a go at this. It would have been fucking excellent. And Ferreira had the high-profile Sleaze Fest, Bad Lieutenant, under his belt in 1992.
Yes, indeed. Horrific. But it did put him front and centre, that for good or bad reasons, that film.
Imagine how grim this would have been, though, if Ferreira had done it.
Oof.
He is the dark centre of New York filming.
Yeah.
He is a sleazy man. I really like his films.
Of course you do.
He's a sleazy man and I love him.
I love his films, yeah.
Ferraro was quoted as saying, "I was supposed to direct Carlito's Way until they fucking fired me." Now, there's nothing concrete on why he got the heave-ho, But a story which he allegedly told but isn't corroborated is that he stole a bottle of wine from the studio head, Universal studio head.
Right.
His desk in his office, he hid it under his jacket, got found out, and then got the boot.
I don't think that's true, is it? I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised.
and well, it depends what the wine was. Let's be honest. If it's like a 57 Beaujolais, fair enough.
Yeah.
Or whatever that means. I just picked the French word. That's probably not even a wine. Fuck if I know.
Well, when De Palma was approached, he was initially reluctant because he said, I didn't even want to read it. I didn't want to return to this terrain again, another movie with Spanish-speaking gangsters, because obviously, as we've said, he'd already made Scarface early with Pacino, but the script did win him over, and the fact that it wasn't a straight-down-the-line gangster flick.
Yeah. It's got a lot more heart than your standard gangster films, I think, I think that's what he was interested in.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to close the segment on De Palma with a quote from the big man himself. He said he considers Carlito's Way his greatest achievement, and he said, I can't make a better picture than this.
Wow. Okay.
From the man himself.
The cast.
A wonderful cast of colourful characters include standout performers and seasoned character actors. We're starting in the obvious place. Former smack runner turned prospective car rental man, it's Al Pacino as Carlito Brigante. Westy, it's over to you.
Carlito Brigante. Oh, Charlie, as I like to call him.
Oh, Charlie, yeah.
This is the gateway drug to the hoo-ha Pacino, like Matt mentioned earlier.
Okay.
This is, the basis. You can kind of see where it's coming from. I mean, you got Carlito's Way, and then this was 93, and then Heat was 95.
Yeah.
And the jump from that, you can see it here. He's on the cusp, and I think De Palma's kind of just went, no, let's just, come on, let's just keep it. And he just stops it from boiling over. It's like putting a Mento in Coke. It's just like, but De Palma's he's got his hand on the top of it. He's like, no, I'm not letting it go yet. And then Michael Mann went, just got that bottle of Coke off De Palma and went, what's this? And it just sprayed in his face. Don't waste my motherfucking time.
What's this?
What's this? This Pacino. Fucking hell, what's he doing? But yeah, I mean, it's just a little too much to take seriously at times. It just feels like he's just a little bit disengaged with what's actually going on. I cannot get into this character. I cannot get into the emotion and the backstory because I don't think it allows for that. I think it's just about this desperation and this whole tortured soul that he's never going to escape where he is and what he's doing. But it doesn't feel like he's got the presence that other characters give him, especially not Benny. I don't feel like he is Carlito, this fucking guy who did all this, had 100 people run the streets.
I can't see that in his performance. I can't see his former character before he went to prison.
And that's my main problem with it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
See that. It seems like he's just working through other characters and he just takes a back seat and he's like, yeah, that's who I was. Yeah, no problem. I was drinking beer on the street. Yeah, I was Carlito. Yeah, there should be an element of that.
There should be.
Element
we should have a scene where there's a spark or a flash of that at least.
Exactly. So you should have, I mean, you see it in, I think, De Palma and Pacino kind of just remember, we're going to do the drop goes wrong. We're going to see how violent he can be and how much he can look after himself. But the way that plays out, it's almost accidental that he gets away with it.
He has to do it.
Yeah, and he doesn't quite know what's going on. Yeah. And I think there's this confusion to the character. He never seems really confident and never seems in control, which is something I would expect from a character called Carlito who had ruled the streets. I would expect him to have a little bit more control. I think he's trying something for me that works like for 95% of the film, but I'm just left wanting just that 5%.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit of confidence and a little bit of energy and a little bit of like, Carlito going to fuck you up. And he's really just down on his luck here. It doesn't feel like he's down on his luck. It feels like he's done this to himself, which to me, I needed a little bit more strength in the character. Yeah,
I can see that. I think it's nowhere near his 70s heyday.
No.
I think you've got a good argument to say it's his best performance of the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as we're talking about, Al, we've got our first Patreon question. As mentioned at the top, if you sign up to be in All the Right Movies Patreon supporter, you can ask us questions for the film that we're talking about.
Yeah.
This one comes from Renato Mussolino. Hello, Renato.
Hello, Renato.
Renato says, hi, lads. You are the best. You wonder why I picked this question.
Self-praise, no praise.
Yeah. Patrons, if you want your question read out, take a lesson from Renato.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
Yes, of course it will. Yeah. That's very kind, though. Thank you, mate.
It is very kind. He says, thank you for what you do. That's very nice.
Oh, bless him.
He says, my question, if you had to give Pacino an Oscar for Best Actor, in addition to the one he has, which performance would you choose? Now, just to run down the films that he was nominated for in his career so far.
Yeah.
The Godfather, Serpico, Godfather 2, Dog Day, and Justice for All. Dick Tracy,
Best supporting actor, wasn't it?
Wow.
which is mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's outrageous.
Glengarry Glen Ross, Scent of a Woman, which he won, and The Irishman. 9
Yes.
nominations in total, 1 win. So which out of any film from his career, not just those, would you give him another statue, Westy?
I would go for The Insider,
Wow.
Great choice.
which
Good
I think
shout.
is a wonderful, wonderful film. A wonderful performance, not only from him, but from Crowe.
Yes.
And one of Michael Mann's best and most underlooked films. So if you haven't
It's a
seen
great
The
film.
Insider, check that out, because that is Oscar worthy for me.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a banger. It's massive.
Yeah.
And what about you, Matt?
I've gone back to his 70s heyday because I think you think Pacino's won an Oscar and it wasn't in that period. And I think, there's 3 standout performances there. And the way I looked at it was, who did he lose out to? So Dog Day Afternoon, that was the same year as Jack Nicholson for Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah,
that's
that's
fair
fair
enough.
Yeah.
Not Jack Lemmon.
Well, I mean, I can't really remember Save the Tiger, but,
No.
Lemon
No.
is a legend, so kind of fair enough.
Yeah.
But then Godfather Part 2, I mean, Westy, we covered this with John. Do you remember who we lost out to? Because we did talk about
Art
this.
Carney for Harry and Tonto.
Art Carney. I mean,
That's insanity, that, isn't it?
an absolutely forgotten performance, a forgotten film.
I'll never forget that.
Yeah, Art Carney
Art Carney.
for Harry and Tonto.
Yeah.
When you've got Pacino at his peak as Michael Corleone in Godfather Part
That's
2.
tragic.
That's the one
It's
that's
outrageous.
just baffling. So that's one I'd go for.
That's the one. Right, okay, so we've got 3 different choices here, which I'm happy about because I thought
great.
we were all going to go for the same thing. Because I was thinking about this long and hard, looking over his filmography, looking from the 70s all the way up to now, but then it hit me. I was completely wasting my time. It's obviously The Godfather. Obviously, that performance from mild-mannered, softly-spoken army hero to cold-blooded killer and head of the most powerful criminal family in New York is incredibly realised. It's one of the greatest acting performances. I don't disagree, Matt. Him in 2, he's almost as good for me. I wouldn't argue against it, but 1 is my preferred.
Yeah.
He was only nominated for Best Supporting Actor for that performance
Yeah.
and lost out to Joel Grey for Cabaret. I mean, in what world is this happening?
I have no idea. But I honestly thought you were going to say Carlito's Way. This fucking film, this performance,
this
is the
one
best
right now.
I've ever seen him.
No, I am not that blinded by it.
Are you not?
Well, we'll see.
You're like Pacino in Scent of a Woman. You're that blind. Pacino starred in Serpico in 1973 and needed to bulk up for the role.
Oh, yeah.
He worked out at the local YMCA where he became friends with judge and soon-to-be author Edwin Torres. Torres was writing Carlito's Way at the time and showed Pacino his work as they pumped iron. Pacino later read both books in full and was interested in the lead if it were to ever be adapted for the big screen. Torres said that it was just predestined that Pacino would play Carlito.
Yeah, it seemed to be set in stone right from the beginning, right from the inception. Nice little story. They've built up quite the relationship as well over the years.
Written in the stars.
And Pacino wanted to grow in a ponytail for the part of Carlito, but after he paid a visit to Spanish Harlem, he changed his mind when he realised that's not the look the Puerto Ricans were going for.
Of course they weren't.
It's a look what anyone's going for. Absolutely
Terrible
disgusting.
choice.
Yeah.
In a complicated turn of events in 1989, Pacino was sued by movie producer Elliot Kastner for breach of contract. Kastner was attached to a project looking to adapt Edwin Torres' Carlito's novels. And according to him, Pacino had agreed to star in the lead, with Brando starring as Kleinfeld.
Right.
Oof.
Allegedly, Pacino reneged on the deal and Kastner was suing him for $6 million. But the project obviously didn't go ahead, and so the lawsuit was dropped.
Right.
So coming just 8 months after his long-awaited Oscar win for Scent of a Woman, Pacino does, I would think you would say, a lot less scenery chewing in Carlito's Way, and the film is a lot better off because of it.
Yeah, a lot less.
Next on our cast list is an actress that we haven't talked about in the past, probably unlikely to in the future.
No, that's a Kindergarten Cop.
Yeah.
It is Penelope Ann Miller as Gail, the object of Carlito's affection.
Yeah.
So at the top, it's just outrageous she doesn't have a surname. Just not considered.
Yeah.
What's her name? Gail. Gail what? Doesn't matter. It's just Gail. Laleen's got a fucking surname, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about Penelope Ann Miller here, and I don't really want to go in on her. I've got some good and bad here. I've got some problems with her in the film, but I don't think she's to blame, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she came to the film with quite a pedigree. In the previous 5 years, she'd been in Biloxi Blues, The Freshman, Awakenings, and Kindergarten Cop. So in that, she'd worked with Mike Nichols, Neil Simon, Marlon Brando, Robert De Niro, Robin Williams, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, Schwarzenegger, not a great actor, but one of the biggest stars on the planet at the time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It's not a tumor.
Who is your daddy?
Or what does he do?
So that's a really impressive run. And now she's working opposite Pacino, who specifically requested her for the part. So you can't argue with that. She obviously knows what she's doing. But I do not buy this character one little bit, to be honest. I've got a few problems with it. Most glaringly, Gail's too young for Carlito. Mm-hmm. Much too young.
Yeah.
Miller was 24 years younger than Pacino. So the age thing is a massive issue.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how, why, and where these two would have crossed paths.
Yeah.
She's far too girl next door. And as a result, I really don't buy her as a stripper either, really.
Definitely not.
She's just too wholesome to be connected with somebody like Carlito, especially considering the horrific stories that we hear about his past.
Yeah.
And I just think Miller is miscast here for certain.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I do cringe at the cheesecake scene, but I do get dragged back on side with her performance. I do buy her pain, her emotion and desperation at not seeing Carlito being sucked back into a life of crime. That emotion at the end when Charlie gets popped really tugs at the heartstrings. The argument that they have about Kleinfeld, great. I think there's a certain amount of tragedy with Gail's life. She's trying to be this big artistic Broadway star, but has to work at a strip joint. And she's taken those dance classes in the desperate hope of hitting the big time. But she's doomed to a life of failure, I think. The city will chew you up and spit you out. She's trying to remain positive, but knows that the likelihood of her achieving her dreams, I think she's getting smaller by the day. And I think Miller portrays that very, very well, that kind of plucky gal. Yeah. But if you start to unpeel the layers, you find that she's very unhappy and knows that she's doomed. I think she does that really well. I just think this story, it's not for her.
No.
It's not for Penelope Ann Miller.
No. And I think from the character point of view, the fact that she calls him Charlie and doesn't call him Carlito, and it's like she's trying to make him somebody else, trying to make him, to take him away from his, heritage, trying to make him into something a little bit more like she is. And maybe he wants that, but it's just not strong enough.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
Which I don't think is down to her performance. I think it's just down to the character. I think the character's very confused.
I think the way the character's written is slightly off. I think the casting's off. It's not her fault. You would jump at the chance of being in a De Palma film with Pacino.
Yeah. Especially if he's asked for her as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And she plays it really, really well. It's just doesn't work.
It's that age difference. It's you can't get around control. It.
Yeah, I mean, 24 years, that is a big age gap, but the two did get romantically involved during filming. In an interview with People magazine in 93, she said, Al is a very passionate person. And he brought out a certain womanliness in me. It's not a secret that I'm not ashamed of it. So it's like, just basically using Pacino, his masculinity, and then saying he brought out this femininity. Yeah. I mean, it's just, Pacino remained tight-lipped about their wonderful union, not least because he was in a 2-year relationship at the time with Greta Lindell Hobbs.
Yeah, it's outrageous behaviour. And she's just flashing ridiculous. It all over People magazine that year.
Yeah. It's not a secret, and I'm not ashamed of it. Well, it is a secret. Shut the fuck
up. Imagine Al reading that.
From a casting point of view, she wasn't first choice. Alison Doody of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade fame.
Right.
She was in the frame Westy, you'll be glad to hear.
Oh, she is a Doody. Yeah, unreal. She's talking to sleep.
She declined the part because of the nudity required, and she would instead go on to star in Major League 2 a year later.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
And the nudity was a big part of the character, and De Palma upped her his old tricks, according to Penelope Ann Miller. She said that De Palma insisted that she auditioned for the part of Gail in a bikini.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In an audition?
Which doesn't sit well, does it?
Not at all.
Jesus Christ.
Sweets in his back pocket. He's fucking, that's disgusting, that. Brian De Palma Violet.
But yeah, I mean, that's outrageous behaviour. Bikini, terrible. Come on, Brian.
Yeah, calm down, Brian.
Yeah.
And actually, John Leguizamo had some unkind comments about her because he brought his autobiography out in 2006. And he wrote that, you really have to know Penelope Ann Miller to dislike her. And during promotion for the book, he claimed that the costume department were taking her costumes in an inch every day to make her think she was gaining weight. And he also said she was flipping out, but she was mean. She was evil, so they kept doing it.
Wow, she's getting a bad rap. That is very strange that Leguizamo said that, because later he said, quotes, I made some hurtful remarks about Penelope Ann Miller in a book I wrote several years ago and on Kelly Reaper's Morning Show last year. This was a lapse in judgment on my part because I'd worked with Penelope on the film Carlito's Way and personally never had a problem with her, nor did I personally experience Penelope have any problems dealing with crew on set or otherwise. I'm sorry if I hurt Penelope. That's really
weird.
confusing.
That's really
Sounds like she
random.
got in touch.
And maybe her lawyer got in touch.
Yeah, I would imagine so, yeah.
Yeah. Very strange, very strange. So I think we all agree, not a bad performance from Penelope Ann Miller. It's just probably she should have been in a different film.
Yes.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Finally on the cast list, the bastard son of Art Garfunkel and Bob Ross. It's Sean Penn as Davy Kleinfeld.
Yes.
Matt, it's over to you.
Yeah. I mean, I remember coming back to this and thinking, really? That's Sean Penn? How am I supposed to take this seriously? Because the thing is, he's so good, it stops being a novelty after about 5 minutes and you realise, no, this is just a great performance. And he really elevates the character because, like a lot of the film, I think fundamentally Kleinfeld as a character is someone we've seen so many times before. A shady lawyer, the best friend who portrays the main character, the guy who gets a little taste of power and success and it goes to his head. But Penn makes it feel really fresh and really compelling. And it's tricky because Kleinfeld, he's such a despicable piece of shit. He should be impossible to take, but there's something about Sean Penn. There's just something so watchable about him. He's magnetic here. You do understand why Carlito would go to such extremes to protect him, because underneath all the coke and all the bluster, you can see the little remnant of the good friend that he once was to Carlito.
Yeah.
So when he double crosses Tony T and he kills him, which obviously we'll talk about later, I'm kind of rooting for Kleinfeld in that moment, even though I know this is a big step towards his and Carlito's downfall in the long run. And after that, when he says to Carlito in the back on shore, let's get a drink, and he wants to celebrate this moment, but Carlito slaps him down, you feel the sting of that. You feel the sting of that friendship really starting to fracture at that moment.
Yeah.
So even though by the end, and we'll definitely talk about this, he's so glad to see him taken out and he completely deserves it and he gets what's coming to him, Penn still manages to find just those little like nuggets of humanity in him. You don't want to, but you care about him just a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
A
You don't
little bit.
absolutely detest him.
No.
No, I think you feel sorry for him more than anything
A little
else.
You do,
bit,
yeah.
Because I think this is an exterior he's had to put up because of the company he keeps.
Yeah. So Penn partially took the part for the money. He liked the role and wanted to work with Pacino, but had a family to support. He was also struggling to get funded for The Crossing Guard, which he eventually secured after this film. And that's a great film.
Yeah, it is a very good film, Nicholson. Penn and De Palma didn't really see eye to eye at certain points during filming. Penn said, he's an operatic movie maker, so the reality level is somewhere off in De Palmaville, and to get a hold of it is impossible.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
He said how to serve him is hard to get a grasp on, so it can become confrontational. But obviously Penn loved working with Pacino and said working with him balanced out the whole experience.
Yeah.
And Penn's distinctive hairstyle in the film, that was inspired by a picture he saw in Life magazine of a law student from the mid-70s. But on release, critics and viewers drew comparisons between how he looks here as Davy Kleinfeld and that of noted lawyer Alan Dershowitz. And Dershowitz threatened litigation, but Penn had a watertight alibi.
That's right, because Edwin Torres, who was also a judge who wrote the novels, he roped in Albert Krieger, John Gotti's lawyer, as consultant on the film. So there's a clear trail for that. And 2 years after the release as well, Dershowitz went on to represent O.J. Simpson.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
And Chuck Sheen was considered for the role of Kleinfeld. He ultimately declined and took Major League 2 instead, just like Alison Doody.
Wow. Terrible choice.
Charlie Sheen, Jesus. Obviously, they dumbed down by bringing Penn on board.
Yeah.
Which is nice. So a mixed bag in the cast. Great Sean Penn, good Al Pacino, slightly misplaced Penelope Ann Miller, and not to mention that great supporting cast.
Yes.
No, definitely, yeah.
This episode of All the Right Movies is sponsored by BetterHelp. Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships or at work and not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And a special offer to all ATRM listeners, you can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/ATRM. That's betterhelp, HELP.com/ATRM. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode of All the Right Movies.
The middle.
The second act brings with us incredible performances from the supporting cast, starting with the introduction of Laline and ending with Benny Blanco and Carlito at inevitable loggerheads.
Mm-hmm.
And you know where this is going, chaps.
We've
Here
known
we
you a
go.
long time now.
Oh, yes.
Here we go.
Okay,
Yeah,
settle
strap
in. Here we go.
Right.
This is what I'm
Okay.
talking about. Laline Miasso, Viggo Mortensen. I'll mention it right away that it's very strange to have an American-Danish actor playing a Hispanic gangster, but we'll let that one slide because
Absolutely.
He's a master of accents.
he is. He really is. And he's electric in this scene. Carlito sets him up as a real good-looking son of a bitch and a stand-up guy with a kind of like little flashback sequence as he's moving from the booth upstairs, which is beautiful because what we get is anything but that. He shows up in this dirty-ass suit, looking like he's been wearing it all the time he's been in Attica, or he's just been given it by the DA to give him some kind of modicum of credibility, but the stains all over it. He's snorting coke and he seems on the edge of a breakdown. But you just can't take your eyes off Laline, who is absolutely desperate on account of, you know, his disability, so much so that he'd rat out one of his own buddies if it meant him getting out of prison. We've mentioned it many times on previous episodes, but his dialogue is just magnificent.
Yeah.
It's hilarious and it's heartbreaking at the same time. We should not be laughing about somebody who shits their pants and wears diapers every day.
Yeah.
We should not be laughing at it.
Who can't hump?
He can't walk, he can't hum. Go ahead and kill me, you cocksucker. It's diabolical, but there's something darkly comic about his delivery. I should not be laughing.
No, we shouldn't be laughing, but we have used this so many times in the past.
So
Say
many
whoever-
times.
Yeah, are you going to the bar? Well, why don't you go? I can't walk, I can't hum.
Look what I got to go around with. Fucking diapers, mate.
Right, I'll get them in. When you get the pints, you fucking cocksucker. You're all welcome to try it. It really works.
It works in all walks of life. It's scintillating dialogue, but I'll always feel sorry for Laline. The man is desperate.
Oh, he's a broken man.
Oh, he's totally broken. Took a couple in the
Totally
back.
broken.
And if he goes back to the joint, he ain't surviving.
Yeah.
No.
One question I do have is, how did Laline get up those stairs? There doesn't appear to be an elevator in the club.
Good point.
But I think what can get lost with this scene, considering the fireworks that Mortensen's setting off, is that it progresses the story on two fronts. Laline tells Carlito that Gale is in a show on 48th and Broadway, and it also keeps us informed that the DR are pressed tight up against Carlito's tail, just waiting for him to step out of line.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all masked with this incredible one-scene performance from Viggo Mortensen before he was Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Really funny. He starts kicking his wheelchair, though. Like, you shouldn't laugh, but that's so fucking funny.
Yeah. And when Pachanga comes up and he just wants to pop him.
And Matt was talking about the reflective surfaces as well, like in the club. But there's loads here, and the camera's just out of shot every time. Loads of reflections. It's just it's beautifully done. Another great sequence.
It is. Well, it brings with it our second Patreon question. And this one is from Greg Gallegos. Hi, Greg.
Hi, Greg.
And Greg says, is Mortensen's cameo one of the greatest ever? Says, I know you've talked about it before, but more details, please. If I was director, I want him in every film just off the back of this. Agreed. Yeah. I think you're right, Greg. We have talked about this. So let's go with one scene cameos for this question.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe not the greatest cameo of all time, but for me, it's one of the most eye-catching and memorable.
Yeah, really
doubt.
memorable. Yeah, definitely.
And that's the theme I had in mind when I was thinking of others. Christopher Walken in Pulp Fiction, just why is he in there? Crazy.
Classic, yeah.
And Alfred Molina as Rahad Jackson in Boogie Nights.
Yeah,
holy
brilliant.
shit.
Yeah.
What's happening there? I love that. It was one of the greatest. These are the ones that have a kind of like a life of their own and leave you spellbound by the over-the-top nature of the performance.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting time in this because, again, if you listen to our last Patreon episode, I talked about watching Civil War, which is out at the minute, and I said,
oh, yes,
in that episode,
Plemons.
Plemons in that. We'll probably get a question, and Jesse Plemons is now in that conversation. Mm-hmm, if you've seen it, you'll know what I mean. In terms of older performances, though, I really love Steve Park as Mike Yanagita in Fargo.
And Fargo, yeah.
Just
nice
that
choice.
One scene. And he's so funny, and he's so
heartbreaking as well. It's probably the same as this in that kind of level of heartbreak, isn't it?
Yeah,
it really is. Such a super lady. It's one scene, but he's so pivotal to that film because that triggers off March thinking about Carl William H. Macy's character.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to mention him, Leland Orser in Seven. That scene when they talk to him, and he's just shivering and shaking.
Yeah.
And he's just talking about what John Doe has made him do. That's just seeded into my brain.
Yeah, that fucking gun was in my throat.
It's hyperventilating, horrific.
And the other one, I always come back to this one, and it's a very long scene, but it is still only one scene. Donald Sutherland in JFK when he lays out the whole conspiracy
as X.
As
really
X
good.
to Garrison. Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah,
brilliant scene. Westy, what about you?
Yeah, I've got two or three.
Brilliant.
McConaughey in Wolf of Wall Street.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was an incredible performance. Really brilliant, really self-deprecating.
Yeah.
Love that.
Got to get those numbers up. The rookie numbers.
Rookie numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Fucking brilliant. And one of the most pivotal, I think, in cinema history, because it not only was a really great cameo, but it also changed how you thought about the whole film, was Drew Barrymore in Scream.
Ah, yeah.
Without doubt.
Just straight, and then you go, oh, there's Drew Barrymore, and then you go, what the fuck's this?
Yeah.
Where's this going to go? Alec Baldwin and Glengarry Glen Ross is incredible.
Yeah. It's the pinnacle, isn't it, that one?
Yeah, that's kind of up there with Walken, I think. But one that really stood out for me recently was Andrew Scott in 1917. I thought he was a really brilliant foil in the middle of all of this madness. Just this guy who's just reiterating how bad war is, but he's just so fed up with it. I thought it was just an incredible performance. That's a brilliant one for me.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, loads of great choices. I think we'd be remiss not to mention Beatrice Straight in Network as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think she does cover it over 2 scenes though, but the majority is that kind of 6 minutes that she has, that one scene. Incredible stuff. So thank you very much for the question, Greg. I hope those fit the bill.
Yes, I hope so too. Thank you, mate.
Yep.
Back to Carlito and Westy. You're going to pick up the action.
Yeah, I'm going to Carlito stumbles on a strip club.
Yeah.
He just happens to be in there, looking for a good time. And I mean, it's really, really wonderful. You know, and the guys are coming up and they're reiterating her performance was just wonderful. It was just wonderful. Really, really wonderful. That is excellent. But for me, this sequence is where Carlito has to turn his back on his former self and has to turn his back on his older principles and his pride.
Yes.
And he has to accept her for who she is.
Yes.
And he has to honour her for who she is, even though this would never have played out in his earlier life.
In his day, no.
Yeah, no way could this have happened. And again, this is brilliant visual storytelling from De Palma, because he looks around at all of the punters and what they're doing, and he's fucking furious. And then he looks back at her and he's like, okay, this isn't about me. This isn't about my jealousy. This isn't about my pride. This is about you. And then when he's talking to her, you expect him to kick off. You expect him to just be like, what you doing here? You don't need to be here. I'll get you out of here. This is a place where you don't need to be. But again, she's supporting, women's rights and her right to do this and her right to display her body if she wants to do it and if she's comfortable doing it. She actually says, like, I'm not sleeping with anybody. I'm just dancing.
Yeah.
And he understands that and he appreciates that. And I think it's a real strong push for that role as like, the feminine in the film, and that she is going to show everything off, but not necessarily use it as a negative.
Yeah.
She's trying to get a positive from it, and she is positive about her body, and I think that's a really important thing to say. And Carlito is moving away from that old-fashioned view of things,
Yeah,
and
nice.
he's trying to grasp this new way of thinking and this new way of elevating, which goes on to a later scene where she's dancing. And, Dave comes over, he's got his hands all over her ass.
Yeah. I believe those are hips.
She's having a good time. Yeah, and it shows not only that he's moving on and moving forward, but it also shows that he's got respect for who she is and what she wants to do, and trust in the relationship and trust for her as a person. It really does open everything up and shows that, again, all his meetings with her, the same in the coffee shop, it shows who Carlito wants to be. And he's so ready to be that person, but the world won't let him be. And again, it's really tragic.
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it definitely shows the progression of the character and certainly what Carlito should be and wants to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great scene.
Well, I'm going to follow up a moment that, again, I think it just shows the development of Carlito as a character, because I love the moments where you just see him happy.
Yeah.
And when he's in that club, I mean, it's a bit of an odd choice to have like a steak meal in the middle of a discotheque. It's quite strange.
Yeah. With Pachanga.
But, he's having some good food, good laugh with Pachanga. But this moment,
Discotheque. All right, Grandad. Fucking hell.
But these moments of happiness are so fleeting because someone always comes along to spoil it for him.
Yeah.
And it's usually Kleinfeld, but this time it's Benny as well. And, as much as Carlito was so dismissive of him, you're like, nah, fuck him.
Oh.
It's starting to put these little pieces in a place that actually you can't totally dismiss Benny. Something's going to happen here. And I just feel for Carlito because he's having to sort out so much unnecessary shit.
Yeah.
And you can see it's wearing him down. Like, Benny's sending over champagne because he wants Steffi sent over in return.
Yeah.
Like, who the fuck is Benny to make these demands?
I know.
Yeah. Send it back.
Everything that's happened is so below Carlito's level of interest here.
Yeah.
And you can feel his impatience with it all. And I think this is the fastest that De Palma moves the camera, just that back and forth between Carlito and Benny at the table.
At the table.
Which, yeah.
Gives
Great.
it this sense that it's going to kick off at any minute.
Yeah.
But whereas Carlito can manage this situation just through his like sheer force of personality alone, the last thing he needs is Kleinfeld pulling the gun out.
Yeah.
And I really hate Kleinfeld in this scene. How does it feel? How does it feel? Like, the whole scene has the sense of all these squabbling little kids, and Carlito's the one adult, like holding them all at arm's length away from each other, just sorting out shit that he shouldn't have to sort out.
Yeah.
He just wants to have his steak.
Yeah. He's the only one who's not on cocaine, which is quite obvious.
Yes,
Yeah.
very much so, yeah.
Yeah.
The timing's beautiful in here as well. Steffi and Kleinfeld go into the bathroom and then Benny trots in right after. The marks that are being hit are just wonderful. And the dialogue, he's in the bathroom fucking Steffi. Good for him. And I love it when Benny says, maybe you don't remember me, and Carlito just butts in. Maybe I don't give a shit. Maybe I don't remember the last time I blew my nose either. Great dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we all know how this goes. Benny should have gone down, and now Carlito has to watch his ass. For the next segment, it's all about springing Tony T out of Rikers. And we're headed to Davy Kleinfeld's beach house for a decadent afternoon party to start it off. Matt, it is over to you.
Yeah, I mean, decadent's the word, isn't it? Exuberant is the other word.
Weekend at Davies.
Weekend at Davies. I mean, again, an incredible amount of extras, an incredible amount of detail going on. That fat guy knocking the table down the bank, that will always make me laugh. That's really funny. And again, it's how precise De Palma makes. It's like the timing of Sean Penn having to hit his mark of when to start moving away from the buffet table.
Jesus.
In sync with that slow pan around until he's out of shot and then was zooming in on the woman who he sends over to talk to Carlito. Again, the scene that should be so straightforward, but you start pulling it apart and you realize how much of this is just choreographed to the nth degree. It's so detailed. And it's another scene where it starts off so funny with Kleinfeld kicking off at Louis for having sex with a woman on the sun lounger. People are eating. Probably the least of your concerns. Like, really, people are eating. But then it gets serious, and then all of a sudden you get this reminder of how much Carlito and Kleinfeld are starting to diverge now from each other. I mean, Kleinfeld, he's such a mess. straight vodka on the rocks, coked up beyond belief. And his plan is ridiculous, like the disbelief in Carlito's voice when Kleinfeld explains the plan and he just goes, swim. Like,
Oh, he's going to drown.
and it's this sense of push and pull. Like Carlito should walk away. He should leave Kleinfeld to clean up his own mess, but he can't do that. It's just not in his nature. And he sees how pathetic Kleinfeld has become now, and he's getting drawn into it anyway. So it's remarkable how this scene changes tone throughout because it ends with this real sense of sadness.
Yeah, it's like a deep sickness in the pit of my stomach, knowing what's coming here. During filming this party scene, De Palma struggled with Penn during the take with him and Pacino. He shot the coverage of Penn about 10 or 15 times before moving over to Pacino, but Penn started kicking off. He said that they didn't have the shot and that he needed at least 20 more takes to get it right. De Palma shot about 10 more, but he needed to move over to Pacino because of the lighting. The sun was going down.
Yeah, Penn was apparently furious about this, screaming at De Palma on set and on the ride back into New York. They finally parted ways, but Penn called De Palma later that night to shout at him even more. Furious.
Let it go.
Wouldn't let it lie.
A magnificent scene. And from there, I'm going to discreetly leap over the cheesecake lovemaking scene and instead talk about the bridge between the prison escape setup and the execution. So the scene where Carlito and Gale are at the Copa with Kleinfeld and Pachanga and their women. The scene starts off so positively. Carlito's voiceover tells us how much he's fallen in love deeper with Gale. He's finding more and more things that he likes about her. His carefree, loved-up attitude is totally confirmed with those ludicrous moves on the dance floor. He's clucking around like an old hen. It looks ridiculous.
Looks fantastic.
I mean, he's horrific on the dance floor in Cruising, and more specifically Scarface, when he's stomping around like a schoolboy at his first disco. But this one is up there for me. It's horrible. I think Sean Penn's at his ugly best here with a bad drinker face that Carlito says, and his eyes are getting beadier. And we know that all isn't well because De Palma, like he does all the way through the film, throws so many Dutch angles in here. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
Every single scene, Dutch angle straight in there. I mean, the film starts on a Dutch angle, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
But I really find it funny when Carlito tells Kleinfeld, when he's saying that he's sick of these guys coming into my office, and pushing me around. And he's saying, I think you should tell him, why would you want to keep that inside? Get that off your chest. And he says, I will. He says, oh, yeah. See how interested he's going to be in your comments. Great.
Yeah.
But then he does, and Carlitos, what the fuck are you doing? But this shows us that Kleinfeld's completely lost perspective. He's going up against this mafia crew without any consideration for his safety or anybody else around him.
Yeah.
Gale sees it in this scene, and Carlito should have jumped ship at this point, knowing what's about to come.
Yeah.
I think this is the emotional centre of everything. Carlito's conundrum. Does he stick with the code of the streets and help Kleinfeld out because he owes him, or does he follow his heart and heed Gale's advice? He knows this situation with Kleinfeld and Tony T is a suicide mission, and that turns out to be the case, the ghost of criminal activity coming back to haunt him. But even knowing that, he still goes ahead with it. And then you've got that blistering argument between him and Gale back at her apartment, and she tells it like it is. And she even signposts the ending by saying it ends with her carrying him into an emergency room.
Yeah.
No matter how much Carlito goes on about getting out and being clean, all he knows is the instincts that he picked up on the streets, and that's what he's acting on in this moment when he decides to help Kleinfeld out. He doesn't know any other way, and I think that the film does a great job of combining that desire to break free and go straight with Carlito's questionable judgment and moral compass. He thinks what he's doing is admirable and the right thing, but he's still involved in criminal activity with people being killed and busted up and drug money and all of this kind of shit.
Yeah.
It's not the cleanest of lifestyles, is it?
No.
So I'm going to go for the actual getting of Tony T.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, I know now you've mentioned who Tony T was played by, because I've written in my notes some really basic acting here from Tony. Some really, you're drowning, Tony. I got it, Brian. I've got it, Brian, no problem. Help me. And it's Dave the Maniac, isn't it? I mean, it's such a great moment. It's such a great scene when he just powers forward. You're going to run him over. And he knows he's trying to just take advantage of the situation to the best possible. But they did get quite close to Rikers prison, didn't they? In that
very close.
And he's, I mean, he has got buoyancy on his side. He's a big man.
He's a big
but you
old
can't
boy.
just float to that buoy. Like,
No.
He's got to be able to swim there somehow, and he gets there no problem with one guard who's going to sort him out. So one guard basically pushes him over the edge, and he swims to that. There's what we're hedging all of our bets on here is this ridiculous scenario. It still feels quite like it's shot in a swimming pool. You know, I know it wasn't shot in the East River, but it just feels like it was shot in a really small environment with just smoke machines going off in the background. And it's a big moment. It's a pivotal moment. And De Palma has shot the prison with this big sweeping helicopter shot. And this just feels really small. But I mean, when Penn goes at him, and what about the crabs and the eels now, and starts hacking at his head? Jesus Christ! I mean, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
It's just the way that holds on that shot, but it's just one more hit, and you just see it crack. It's
good
like,
sound design as well.
Yeah, and then he goes up to Frank, and he's like, and you don't see what happens to him, but he just pulls him out. It's like, Frankie, sorry, Frank. And he's just laughing about it. But there's just a great performance from Pacino here, where he's just, for fuck's sake.
You fucked us, Dave.
He's like, man, you've killed us now.
Mm-hmm.
But Davey just wants to keep going and to say, we can own all of this. And he doesn't really want to own it. I'm going to put another 10 grand in. And Carlito's just had enough.
Yeah.
And he's just,
breaking point.
What he's saying is, I don't want to be your fucking friend anymore. Like, I've done enough now. I don't need you. I don't want you in my life anymore. I'm going and I'm done. But he's gone too far to get to that point. He should have got to that point when he left prison, just met Gail and just went.
Yes.
It's one of them sequences that plays out exactly like you expect it to, but it's still shocking at the same time.
It
and
is
I think
shocking.
Penn's maniacal performance here, he's just lost it completely. And he's lost control. Carlito knows that, and he wants out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Westy mentioned there about it not being the East River, and that's because it was just too difficult, too dangerous to film there. So where it was shot was a Brooklyn shipyard, and the boat was placed in a locked-off body of water, which doubled for the East River. And as Westy mentioned there, to mask the industrial look of it, De Palma just used smoke machines.
Oh, right. Well, it totally feels like that for me.
Yeah, it does.
Very much.
So with Tony T gone and Kleinfeld a complete loose cannon, Carlito's inevitable end draws closer.
Oh, yeah.
The Crew.
Starting off as we normally do in The Crew, with the screenwriter David Koepp, one of the most consistent writers of the last 35 years. He wrote both Jurassic Park and Carlito's Way in 1993. Pretty good going.
Wow.
But what about his work here? And I'm going to start us off. I think the dialogue sizzles. I think it's irresistible.
Yes.
And there are these scenes that are just larger than life, brought to the screen by De Palma, of course, but David Koepp has got to take a load of credit. Big moments like the pool shootout, the Riker jail bust, Adios Counselor, the entire last 30 minutes. There's enough for an entire career, let alone one film.
Yeah.
I do have a question about a few things, like why would Kleinfeld go to all this trouble of getting Carlito out of prison just to put him right back in there? If the DAs do have such a hard-on for Carlito, surely they can trace his stake into the club back to the pool hall shootout. Also, Carlito isn't that straight. The only way he's able to consider getting out is by those ill-gotten gains from the pool shootout.
Yeah.
Hardly saintly behaviour, but I suppose that's the ambiguity at the heart of a man who's made crime his life. And he seems to be making money very, very quickly.
Yeah.
A few months and then he's out. In 1970, he's going to make 30 grand in a few months. What?
Yeah.
But at the heart of the story, I think, is the theme of redemption. I think I should feel that I'm let down by the film because we kind of know what has to happen at the end, and it's not a happy ending. But what is satisfying is Carlito's redemption. In roughly 6 months, he's admirably tried to avoid the slings and arrows of his world, and in that time, I think he takes solace from the fact that he's done more good than he ever did when he was a baddie before he went to prison.
Okay.
He was never going to make it to El Paraiso, but that's not the point, I don't think. He's pulled Gail out of a situation where she potentially could get caught up in shady dealings because her life isn't going as it was planned.
Yeah.
Maybe a stretch, but, she is working in a strip joint. It's not like she's taking extra shifts at the hospital to make ends meet.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
And there was no way that Carlito was ever going to make it out alive. He says it himself in the opening voiceover. He said, my Puerto Rican ass isn't supposed to make it this far. Most of my crew got washed a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I think the film is saying that you've got to repent for your sins, but you can't just all of a sudden say, I've changed, and then everything's going to be, martinis and tennis.
Yeah.
Carlito's dodgy dealings in his youth set the foundations for him to become trapped when he gets released from prison. Like you've been saying, Westy?
Yeah.
He may have changed, but his reputation and the circles he mixed in are set in stone. he's predestined to come to this ending on account of his former misgivings, I think.
Yeah. It's far more of a punishment than him staying in prison for 30 years, losing Gail, dying the way he does.
Absolutely.
It's far more.
Mm-hmm. It may be not the happy ending that we'd like for a sympathetic character like Carlito, but really, he doesn't deserve much else considering his criminal past. So I like that the writing doesn't give us the happy ending that we may come to expect, and it makes us reason why we don't get that. And I really like that. It makes you work for it.
Yeah.
Matt, what about you and the writing?
I think on the face of it, there's a lot of established tropes here that it relies on. The criminal coming out of prison, determined to go straight, gets dragged back into his old lifestyle against his will. His best friend is an unpredictable cokehead who betrays him. He wants to reconnect to the great lost love of his life, but we know it's going to end in tears. So it is stuff we have seen countless times before, but there's something about the writing that it does still feel fresh and authentic. And I think, obviously, the cast help. I think the way De Palma films it helps as well, but all the same, there is just a little bit of a unique sensibility to it, which I like. I think centered amongst the Puerto Rican community with all their slang, all the nuance in their dialogue, that gives it this like sheen of realism. And even though the first scene establishes what's going to happen, which is a risky move, and I think we'll talk about that in a bit later, it still doesn't feel like it's just ticking off a list of perfunctory scenes before we get to the end. I think there is a genuine tension to the narrative as these moments play out, no matter how familiar on the surface they are. And I think you have to give credit to the writing for that. I think there are some scenes that aren't as elevated as the others, and they are quite a bit soap opera in the way they come across, and unfortunately most of them do revolve around Gail.
Yeah.
I mean, the scene where, she's pregnant and she's going to get an abortion, I mean, it doesn't help that Pacino's in there, but immediately, certainly in my head, I just go, this is Godfather Part 2 with Kay. You know, we've already seen this, this is very familiar. But on the whole, it tells a story that you might think is predictable, but it gives it enough of a twist to give it that extra bit of energy that I think it needs.
Yeah, I do feel as though it's got a lot of authenticity in the writing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it is a very authentic script, and I think it's one that has a lot of grit into it, especially the dialogue, and it is gritty and grounded and realistic and relatable. And I think that was overshadowed with flashy direction.
Okay.
And I think because De Palma had such a strong script, he's like, I'm just going to put so many layers on top of this because I can cover this and it'll still shine through. And still pile all of my creative themes visually on top of this. And the script is that good. Like I've said before, some of the visual flourishes you don't notice. And you'd normally put that in when the script was lacking.
Right.
When the script needed work, when you needed to say, fucking hell, the characters aren't fleshed out enough. Let's do a massive tracking shot then. Yeah. Let's just do something that is just visually entertaining so that we'll drag the audience in. But I think the way the characters are written, I think the way that everything's set up, it is a familiar premise, but it's one that you always want to dive into. It's always one that you want to explore. It's always one that you want to say.
It's an attractive world to go into,
it's a redemption story. It's somebody who's been bad and wants to do good, and how are they going to do that? Because we all feel like that. We all feel like we've let somebody down or we've been bad in the past, and how do you make good of things, and how do you become a better person, and how do you live a life where you're happy? How do you finally get there? And I don't think anyone ever does. And I think that's the whole basis of this premise and this basis of this script. Just because it's put on these characters and just because it's put on what they've done in a bad way, and probably the worst way, murder, drug deals, New York in the 70s, and it's just obviously bad to an obvious good, but it's still very relatable. The characters are brilliant, the dialogue's brilliant, the writing's brilliant. It's just been overshadowed by, like I've said, just a bit too flashy direction because of
just
the confidence
a bit too
of the
much for you from De Palma.
I think so, yeah.
No, I get that. I understand that. It's not for everybody. The film itself is based on 2 novels by Edwin Torres, as we've been alluding to. He was a Supreme Court judge in New York. Those books were Carlito's Way from 1975 and After Hours from 1979. He had sold the rights to the novels 10 times and made money each time before they were actually optioned for the big screen. Right. Torres said, when the producer told me they were going to finally make it, I just as soon kept selling the options. Kind of goes back to what we were saying before about the time when Pacino was going to be sued. That was one of those times.
Right.
Okay. That it didn't go through, but the rights had been sold. But the rights have only been sold for, say, a short period of time, and then they revert back to Torres.
Yeah, they revert back to him, Yeah, and Torres said that Carlito was based on 3 specific people who he knew, through his job, but he's never revealed who they were. And similarly, Kleinfeld was a patchwork of attorneys he knew, but he didn't want to reveal their names either. According to Torres, 3 lawyers I knew personally have been murdered in situations not dissimilar to Kleinfeld's.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, admirable stance to maintain that anonymity, but if you really wanted to know who they were based on, I suppose you could just do a little bit of research, and that would give you a good idea considering what he's just
Probably,
said.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 3 of them. Okay. That's a good starting point.
Okay,
Yeah,
good
here we go.
start. Not dissimilar to Kleinfeld, right? Okay. Got that as well.
Yeah. Perm. Stabbed with perm. Google. Although the film claims that it's based on both Torres books, it's really only based on the sequel book After Hours. But because De Palma wanted to avoid confusion with the Scorsese film After Hours from 1985, the film was changed to Carlito's Way, the name of the original novel, on which the prequel is based.
Right, yeah. Very complicated stuff.
And the voiceover from Carlito was originally written to take place in a hospital corridor during his final moments. De Palma moved it to the train station, suggesting that the whole thing is a recollection that takes place when the wheels of the stretcher get stuck in a crack in the platform floor.
Right. The description in the screenplay does say that a wheel gets stuck in a crack in the platform floor, and it really makes a big deal out of them trying to wedge it out, and that's when he starts to recount this.
Right, okay.
That's not apparent on screen, though, is it?
No, not at all.
Not.
So solid work on writing duties by David Koepp, one of the most prominent screenwriters of modern times.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
Next up, we're talking about the sounds of the streets and the clubs. It's the music in Carlito's Way. The score is by Patrick Doyle, and the film is stuffed with disco and Latin music of the era.
Yeah.
Now we're talking. Matt, what do you think about the music?
It's almost a perfect soundtrack.
Almost.
The original score, I love. It's very Bernard Herrmann, very brooding, very atmospheric, loads of drama of the film. And the soundtrack is wonderful. Loads of stuff that I love. Rocky Baby. I love music. Rock the Boat. Again, I think another big influence on PTA for Boogie Nights, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
But the reason I say almost perfect, elephant in the room, got to talk about Joe Cocker stinking up the joint. I mean, you are so beautiful. Not once, but twice.
I know.
I mean, first time you hear it, it's over the worst scene in the film. But then I have it over the end credits as well.
I know. It leaves you with a bad taste in your mouth.
Oh, it's such a dreadful song.
I disagree. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful song.
Right.
And I think it's so well performed by Joe Cocker. I think it's just when you put them in over this scenario of them getting together and him dying, it's so fucking ridiculously blatant of like sentimentality.
It's horrible.
It's an incredible song, an incredible performance.
Okay.
But putting it over the top of like a love sequence with a cheesecake, I mean, come on. Yet the end credits, it doesn't need that.
No, it doesn't.
It's a great song if you put it in a different situation.
Use some of Patrick Doyle's music over the end credits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you don't need
easily.
This song. There's a moment in the song where I think it's near the end where he goes to be. It's horrible.
I just think that a lot of the music in this is what you'd expect to hear.
Okay.
And I think,
really?
There's nothing too experimental. I mean, you should be dancing by the Bee Gees. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I got that.
Shake Your Booty, Casey and the Sunshine Band. It's, you would expect that in there. Lady Marmalade, it's just so obvious to put in this kind of film. And if you look at Boogie Nights and the soundtrack on that, it's totally unexpected songs. The score is really, really good, but at the same time, no real theme, so it is quite forgettable. But yeah, I mean, it's good, but it's just fucking songs that you would hear on like smooth radio as you're driving to work. And you just say, oh God, I've heard these a billion times to the point where they're not even songs anymore.
Yeah, I know that, but that's in retrospect, I think. And
what,
also
93?
In 93, yeah, that's 30 years ago. You've had 30 years of hearing those songs on Sun FM or whatever.
I know. I just feel like that was like 5 years ago, 93.
No. And also, this music is playing in the clubs. They're not going to be playing some obscure numbers. They're going to be playing the big hitters.
Of course, yeah, that makes sense.
There are a lot of obvious things like Bee Gees, Rock the Boat, amazing. That's the way I like it. But you've also got Pillow Talk and the excellent Backstabbers by the OJs, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And then you've got deep cuts from the likes of Ray Barretto and Willie Collo, those Latin stars with that Latin music, which is amazing stuff. And the score by Patrick Doyle, I think, is great. I think you can get lost in amongst the songs, but if you listen out, it is a strong presence, particularly in the romantic scenes with Carlito and Gail. And like you said, Matt, channeling Bernard Herrmann in the final chase scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The niggles I have with it are similar to you, Matt. You are so beautiful. I don't like the sentiment in that song. You are so beautiful to me. Nobody else, but to me, for sure.
Yeah.
And it feels out of tone with the rest of the tracks. Disco, salsa, and then this sugary ballad.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
No.
Love it, mate.
And a really, really specific niggle that I have, this may be just me, but there are songs on the soundtrack that, no matter how good they are, were released after 1975.
Oh, yeah. That irritates me when I see it.
It really does. Got to Be Real by Cheryl Lynn. I love it, but it came out in 1978.
Yeah.
It does irk me that. Otherwise,
Bastard.
the music keeps me firmly rooted in the period otherwise. So a great combination of soundtrack and score, save for a few exceptions by a couple of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Finally, again, someone that we haven't talked about on the show. It is cinematography by Stephen H. Burham.
Burham, yeah.
Westy. Burham's work.
Burham's work, talented man, very, very talented man. He worked with De Palma on pretty much everything. I think Body Double was the first, and I believe that his style is De Palma's style. Very similar to Robert Yeoman, who works with Wes Anderson all the time. It's like Yeoman makes Wes Anderson's style work because he knows what lenses to use, he knows where to move the camera, he knows exactly what he wants to do. And everything that's thrown at him, he totally nails, to be fair. And I know it's De Palma's choice to put these shots in the film, but it's Burham's choice to get the shots in the first place. And he really does. The split diopters he uses is fucking amazing. The way he moves the camera is fucking amazing. And there's lots of these really long lenses that make it feel very claustrophobic. When Carlito's walking through the streets, and it just picks him out, say that shot in Taxi Driver when he's walking down the street. That lens, that's like a 200 mil, 300 mil or something miles away, and you zoom right in, so you make it so that he separates from the background, he separates from everything. Okay. He's not part of the crowd. The way he's changing things up to wide angles, to all the reflections that would have been everywhere, and he's got to ignore them. Everything's lit so well, and everything flows, and the camera flows. And I don't think Stephen Burham gets enough credit, to be honest, for how much he moves the camera and how much he's moved. I mean, you watch this and watch The Untouchables, it's two completely different films with exactly the same style. Yeah. Exactly the same style. And to have that kind of commitment to a director, and he does it with aplomb, to be fair. Wherever De Palma tells him to put the camera, he puts it, and wherever he tells him to do it, he makes it work. Yeah. And it's his work here that actually elevates the film. And his work does pay off because it is incredibly watchable. It is incredibly well done. He's a master of his craft. But fuck me, did De Palma make him work for it?
He makes him work for his money.
Yeah, 100%.
Whether you agree with the directing style and the way that the camera moves or not, I definitely do. Westy, you've got some issues with it.
Yeah.
There's no denying how accomplished the work is. Yeah. It's one thing for De Palma to have this vision and how these shots are going to look, and it's another thing entirely to be able to pull them off.
Yeah, and he does.
He does. Mention those long takes, and we'll get to them in the end, of course.
Yeah.
But Jesus Christ, I think this is some incredible work by Burham, who I really don't think he gets the credit that he deserves.
No.
And he's worked with, like you said, Westy, De Palma since the mid-'80s. And De Palma, before that, he's worked with some of the greatest DPs in cinema, Vilmos Zsigmond, Laszlo Kovacs being two of them. But Burham has been his most frequent collaborator, and considering De Palma's penchant for the complicated work that he does, he's obviously doing something right. I mean, we start off with that outrageous shot of Carlito on the stretcher. The camera does a 180 before looking down on Pacino.
Yeah.
That's an unbelievable shot.
It's
Why
ridiculous.
is that happening?
Just save it for, that's the ultimate shot in any film. Like the ending, you just go, oh my God, everything becomes real. That's the opening shot.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's crazy.
I just don't know how he didn't have a nervous breakdown. I mean...
Well, yeah, exactly.
I get stressed watching some of the sequences because I'm like, oh my God, what if he tripped? What if one of the extras did something, dropped a glass in the background? You'd have to start this from the beginning. And we've already mentioned, the past that he has with De Palma. And also he shot second unit stuff on Apocalypse Now, which I imagine if you get through that shoot in one piece, anything else is probably water off a duck's back, to be fair. The complicated setups, it's so notable that he is De Palma's go-to man, because
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like I say, it's just, yeah, I can do that. And he doesn't seem to sweat it over like how insanely complicated De Palma wants to make it.
Yeah, and the proof is in the pudding, and it's a hell of a pudding.
It is a hell of a
It's a
pudding.
delicious pudding.
Yeah.
So a strong crew on Carlito's way. I think big props should also go to Ord Bronson Howard and Richard Silbert for their outstanding costume and production design, respectively.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Great stuff.
The end.
Before the final act, Sasso warns Carlito about all the wild shit that Pachanga is saying behind his back and that he's working with Benny Blanco. Why Carlito doesn't take heed, I do not know.
No.
But in this segment, slimy Davy Kleinfeld gets what's coming to him, starting with taking one in the chest. Matt, you're going to take us away.
I am going to go for Kleinfeld getting stabbed because by this point, who isn't cheering for this to happen? Everybody's cheering this on. Again, another sequence, I would just say, classic De Palma. Just his ability to create and to hold tension like no one else. And I think it's also the sequence that is the most Hitchcockian, you know, often gets said, you know, De Palma takes so much from Hitchcock. And I do think this scene, which is just someone waiting for a lift to open, is absolutely the kind of scene that Hitchcock would have loved to do.
Yeah.
And it's so tense, but again, it's just one of those unbroken shots. Even just the opening when he's taking that phone call, the camera's circling the desk. Again, doesn't need to circle the desk. It's keeping still. What's it doing? You're not going to lose anything by keeping the camera still. But I love the music here. You know something's happening. Something's going to go wrong here. You know something's happening when that guy who's been sitting there so casually just gets up and follows Kleinfeld, but he hangs back a bit, doesn't want to give himself away too early. And it's that touch of the light above the lift, like blinking away, like cross between a heartbeat and a warning light. It's really nice.
Love it.
Subliminal touch to that. And it is one of the funniest bits in the film when that guy comes out swinging the baseball bat, completely misses Kleinfeld and just whacks his bodyguard instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great scene.
It's a magnificent scene. It's incredibly similar to De Palma's elevator scene from Dressed to Kill.
Yeah. He loves an elevator scene.
Incredibly similar.
Yeah.
Right.
Both incredible.
If you're going to steal from yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to go into another character moment is when Gail's leaving and he just, I always find this really funny when Carlito's just so far away. Hey, wait up. And he just has to run all the way around again to Palma. Like, just make him outside the door. When you just make him come into the frame. You just have to run all the way around. And then there's that guy in the background, which you find out he's just, you know, he's been waiting there. They've all been there. Terrible time for them to show up. She's having a terrible time. She's late. She's pregnant. And then it's bang, right, we're going to bring you in and we're going to make you do what you abhor everyone in your life for doing. And we're going to sit down. At the same time, it's a really brilliant moment in the character development and the writing, and that he has something to live for now. He has something to do this for, and it won't be for himself. But he still can't bring himself to be that person. He can't bring himself to do it. Even when he hears Dave's recording, that fucking bastard, and put him back away. And you would think he's going to snap. He's got, you know, there's a baby here. Gail's with him. He's still sticking to his guns. And this is where I think he kind of almost breaks up with Gail in front of her. He has this moment where he's his old self when he never has been, but he has to be in front of her. And I think it's a really painful scene where he just has to act like, you know, like Danny Zuko when he meets Sandy, but he's with everybody else. And he's like, hey, hey, what's the matter with me? What's the matter with you, baby? You know, I think it's got that kind of outfit, hasn't it, where he has to act like Carlito instead of Charlie. And I think it's really important that she gives him another name and another persona and another personality. And he can't plug into that, even though the information that he's got and the news that he's got. I just think it's a really pivotal character moment. It's really well written and it's absolutely heartbreaking.
Even after he's heard that recording from Kleinfeld, there's no way that's not part of his moral code.
Yeah, exactly.
The code of the streets. He doesn't want to rat Kleinfeld out, so he organizes this magnificent sequence at the hospital.
Yeah.
And this is pure Brian De Palma.
Yeah.
This is what I would show somebody who's new to his work.
Right.
Get this scene in there and tell me you don't want to watch his entire back catalogue, including Mission to Mars. Get it in there.
Fuck off. You've gone too far. I've had so much patience up to now. You've gone too far now.
Carlito's got to look Kleinfeld in the eyes. He's got to know for sure. And I like that. He uses the siren. When he gets there, he uses the siren outside to pull the gun on Kleinfeld and catch his reaction.
Yeah.
And there's beautiful understatement in the writing. Carlito doesn't say one word before Kleinfeld spills his guts and gets all aggressive. Fuck you, fuck the streets, your whole world's this fucking big and there's only one rule, you save your own ass.
Yeah.
And now Carlito knows. And Carlito leaves the gun in front of Kleinfeld. When they come in, you ready? Brilliant.
Yeah.
The music kicks in as Carlito leaves and the shady looking policeman comes into Kleinfeld's room. And at this point, we're expecting some shit to go down, but we really don't know what Carlito's done, even though De Palma focuses on Carlito's hands.
Yeah.
And when he says, there's a delivery for you, Mr. Kleinfeld, more Dutch angles, but it's done superbly. 2 shots tilting in perfect harmony together.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. What the fuck's going on? And then the most satisfying of payoffs, we cut down to Carlito on the streets. Adios, counselor.
Yeah.
Oh, incredible. So satisfying. Oh, yes. Incredible stuff.
That was a joy. That was a joy to watch.
Yeah. Oh, God, it's magnificent.
Your reaction to that scene is better than the scene itself.
I wouldn't have thought so,
I
Westy.
fucking do.
And in the book, Kleinfeld is stabbed, but he survives. But De Palma had it rewritten, so he shot and killed because he didn't think it was fair if Carlito had died. But Kleinfeld gets away with it.
Yeah, this scene was hotly debated. Kep wrote them with a voiceover, but De Palma wanted the voiceover to be reserved for the train station sequence only. Added to this, Pacino didn't think the scene should be filmed at all. He didn't think his character would have set foot in that hospital in any scenario whatsoever.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it is fair enough.
Yeah.
So the scene was written and rewritten around 25 times before they all agreed on a middle ground. And Kep was on set to provide on-spot rewrites when required.
Yeah, I understand Pacino's reservations because it's like going into a hornet's nest.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wouldn't do it. Yeah.
You know that's going to be heavily surveillance.
Yeah.
So a perfect ending to one of the scummiest characters of the decade.
Yeah.
The final segment, now we're talking 30 minutes of breathless Brian De Palma energy. The final scene pulls out all the stops, starting in the club. And I'm going to start off here. I must take issue with the start of this scene. Why does Carlito entrust Pachanga with Gale, knowing that he's working with Benny Blanco?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
What's happening? Does he think that everyone has the same code as him? New rules now. He's seen that with Kleinfeld.
Yeah.
We can give that a pass. And this moment in the club is just more De Palma on fire. A great long take, obviously. Follows Carlito into the club. Great setup, great blocking, cues, timings being hit all over the place with Tony T's crew in the background ready to pounce. Then there's this cheeky little in-joke in the dialogue here, where the character Petey, he's talking about the old days working with Carlitos in the 50s, couple of fucking kids. He says, first time I saw this guy, I thought he was Italian. Of course, Pacino is Italian. As we mentioned, there's some question marks over whether him playing a Puerto Rican is the right thing.
Yeah.
Understandable on account of that accent alone, because it is crap.
Yeah.
But the piece de resistance here is that 1 minute, unbroken, low-angle, 360 shot where the 4 guys are sat down. It starts on Pete, it goes left to Carlito, back round to Pete, clockwise round the other 2 guys before landing back on Carlito. An incredible shot. I think it's reflective of Carlito's mind working overtime trying to work out the angle on these guys. I can't get enough of it.
It's stressful just reading it out.
It's so stressful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that how the music goes low and high in the mix depending on the location. When Carlito goes into his office, it's low, gives you a great sense of immersion in the film. And then there's a great moment where Carlito makes his getaway under the cellar. And I think this is kind of what you were saying, Westy, near the start when you saying it's a little cartoonish.
Yeah.
The guys are out on the street, they catch a glimpse of him, and then they scream, "There he is!
Yeah.
Let's go!"
Yeah.
And the music blows up, kind of like larger-than-life dialogue, reminiscent of the crime flicks of the 30s and the 40s.
Yeah.
But I understand a little bit too overblown, if that's the kind of thing you were referring to, Westy.
Yeah. I'll go for, the escape from the club. Great, cartoonish, like you just said, Luke. And then when he gets on the train, and it is a wonderful build of tension. It is wonderfully orchestrated, perfectly blocked, beautifully shot. Interiors, exteriors, going through different carriages. The big fat man, blocking the way so they don't get there in time. They're just behind him all the time. It's believable. It's buyable. And then a great moment where he gets to the door and he brings the gun out and the police come in and they're all standing around, these trainees, or I don't know what they are, but they're just like, the badges are evidence, so, he's kind of safe, and there's this safe haven.
A little bit, yeah.
And it's when they leave the train, because I'm bang up to it to that point, and I know what you said, there he is, and they run after him, and it's just a little bit overinflated. I love that whole sequence on the train, but coming off the train and he's asking them, I'm going to the Bronx, which way is it going to be? Down that way, and out there. And then just escapes by running behind some balloons, which is fucking hilarious, right? And they're all looking around as if they're completely doe-eyed and stupid. Where's he gone? Oh, well, where's he possibly gone? And they walk one way, and then they go, there he is again, and then they start running after him. And it feels to me a bit like Baby's Day Out at this point, like falling over each other, these mumbling gangsters, and it's just like, oh god, right, we're going there, and we're going there, and it's going and just runs towards Grand Central Station. It's really good the way it's intercut with Gail waiting for him, and the train's going to be a certain amount of time. But for me, that whole sequence and that whole build of tension is done so much better in The Untouchables. It's just done so much more calmly. Okay. It just has a lot more of a tense build, and it's slow. This is just fast.
Yeah, I get that.
I don't know if it needs to be this fast on the train. All these shots are great, but you forget how good they are because the pace is just relentless.
It is relentless. This scene on the subway took months to film. The number of setups required were countless. It was shot in an actual subway system, so the ability to halt and reroute scheduled trains for filming were kind of few and far between. They had to do it at night.
Outrageous.
They started filming in the winter and ended in the middle of summer. Right. The major issue with that being that Pacino had to wear that ankle-length leather trench in the height of summer. De Palma said he was sweating to death. At one point, he said he'd had enough and actually just took the train home.
Fair one.
Yeah.
Fuck this.
And that's what's in the film.
Yeah. But it's unbelievable. These are real locations. That really is 125th Street station that he gets on at. That's a moving, working subway. That really is Grand Central Terminal. Yeah. It's incredible. Yeah.
So I'm going to bring it to the end now, because De Palma, he loves scenes with lifts, and he does love scenes in train stations, doesn't he?
Loves it.
You know, he's trying to one-up himself like what he did with The Untouchables, but I think I probably agree with Westy. I don't know if he needs to one-up himself, to be honest. By this point, you just feel that situation just really slipping out of Carlito's control, and you get that in Pacino's performance. He's not as cool and collected as he once was. He's jittery. He knows he's being pursued and time is ticking away. But it's like De Palma has all these toys in his box, and it's his last set piece, so he's going to use all of them at the same time. You know, the music is fantastic, and that camera work is like a cross between a choreography and a chess match. The way that De Palma is moving everything around and into place and all these intricate little details at the same time. So Carlito, he's going to go down the escalator, but he pulls himself back. The camera pulls around with him, and that reveals the two mobsters approaching who stop just at the right time. And then it does such a great job of creeping along with Carlito, peeking over the edge, seeing what he sees. Then when he ducks back is at the bottom of the escalator, but the camera keeps going down. That kind of like...
Oh, Christ.
It makes you sit up because the camera's just detached from Carlito for the first time. And again, it's the timing with all those extras in that scene. And it is funny when he finally cuts and it's to that fat guy who's obviously way behind everyone else. Clearly not in fit shape for this kind of work, but it's not just a cheap gag. It's another illustration of how De Palma uses the camera to reveal information, because to cut back to the escalators and then that whip around to see Carlito on his back going down on the other one. Nearly a perfect plan until that tubby one spots him, and then it all goes to hell.
Yeah.
It's still quite funny though, isn't it? He's just like lying on his back going down the escalator.
That overhead shot though is magnificent.
Yeah, it's wonderful, but it's just, come on.
Yeah, no one saw him do it. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Nobody's looking at him saying, what's this guy doing?
What are you doing land on there, mate? You're all right.
Yeah. He's the only person going down.
So the original finale of Carlito's Way was supposed to take place at the World Trade Center. De Palma said, I had elaborate storyboards. Of course he fucking did.
Of course he did.
This whole shootout on escalators that were in the World Trade Center. He spent weeks planning, but a few days before the shoot, there was the tragic bombing of the North Tower where 6 people were killed. So De Palma switched the action to Grand Central Terminal.
Right. Didn't he have to do a similar thing with The Untouchables, switch the action to Union Station? Because he wanted it on a train.
Yeah. I think that was a budgetary thing though, wasn't it?
Was it? Right, was, okay, yeah. Shit out of luck when it comes to finales.
Yeah.
Just finales.
Well, this leads us to the very end of the film, We've talked about it, and we have a Patreon question to wrap us up from Ewan Campbell. How are you doing, Ewan?
Hello, Ewan.
Ewan says, do you think the chase at the station would have been more exciting if we hadn't already been shown the outcome at the beginning of the film? Now, De Palma said that he bookended the films with the shooting because he wanted to create a sense of deja vu within the audience. Obviously, one's black and white and one's in colour.
Yeah.
My answer to Ewan's question is, I don't really think it would have changed the excitement levels of the final chase. I think you're always anticipating that the protagonist will make a recovery and get that happy ending.
Yeah.
Realism doesn't come into it when it's movies, particularly something like this. You think he's going to make a miraculous recovery. And I don't think it's really confirmed at the start that Carlito is going to die.
No.
He even says, my heart, it don't ever quit.
Yeah.
I ain't ready to check out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So there's something there that makes you think, oh, you might survive this. So there's a certain amount of optimism. I think De Palma makes it clear throughout the course of the film that Carlito's fate is inevitable. So I don't think there are any real surprises. Even if you know he's going to buy it, that last 30 minutes is so breathless that you'd be forgiven for forgetting about his demise.
Yeah.
On every rewatch, there's still something in me that has hope that Carlito is going to make it. Say it about 20 times, still doesn't change. So, no, for me, the chase is as exciting as anything I can think of from a final scene in the last 30 years. Genuinely.
Right.
Fair enough.
Wow.
And I must also mention, I always get a chuckle at Benny Blanco taking Pachanga out.
Yeah.
When Pachanga says, shall we leave? And he says, nah, you stay here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And then just disappears from the screen.
Yeah.
Matt, what about you?
No, I don't think it changes it for me either. I think the fact that we hear Carlito's voiceover throughout, it almost distracts you a little bit because you think, oh, well, if he's talking, he's going to be all right at the end, isn't he? And I think it would be almost too depressing if we weren't kind of given this little forewarning of how tragically it's going to end. You know, on our last Patreon episode, we talked about Drag Me to Hell, and we kind of all agreed that that film ends so horribly for the main character. We think, oh, why do I want to go through this journey again? And I think Carlito's way dodges that because it flags it up from the beginning. It, almost warning you, look, this isn't going to end well for Carlito, but it's going to be a hell of a journey to get to that point.
Yeah, agreed. What about you, Westy?
Yeah, I mean, I totally forgot about the start when I get to the end.
Yeah, I do. I still do
I
now.
genuinely do. And I've rewatched this a couple of times, and I still, when I rewatched it again, I forget that it opens like that. I genuinely do. I forget that it opens on that shot. I think the way it is played out, the way it is black and white, you kind of don't really have a level of importance when you're watching it. You think, oh, this is a flashback. This is something that's happened before. And this something maybe happened before he went into prison. This is something that happened a long time ago. And you don't put two and two together, really, because you don't see the environment. You don't see who he's shot by. You don't really see anybody else but a massive close-up on him and him on a stretcher and a train. De Palma distracts you so much and so well that by the time you get to the end of the film, it's almost like, oh, fuck yeah. Oh, yeah, shit, I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and that's who shot him. And I think that's the whole point. He set it up because you don't see who shot him. And when you find out that you do, that's the gut punch. It's not the fact that he dies, it's who kills him is the point. That's the whole point of the film. And that's why he dies. He's killed by his younger self. He's killed by his past. He's killed by everything that he's done. And I think that's what De Palma gets across so well on this. It opens beautifully, it ends beautifully, but you forget about the opening because the end's so good.
Yeah, wonderful. So not the end that we maybe want for Carlito, but probably the one that he deserved.
Yeah.
Always inevitable ending, I think. Yeah.
Last of the Mohicans.
Reception and awards.
Prior to the release of Carlito's Way, Universal wanted to make the film shorter so they could get more showings of it in cinemas. De Palma knew there was a 12th of November release date already set and successfully argued that by tinkering with the runtime would mess with the release date.
Right.
So he won out. At the premiere, a few days before the nationwide release, 7th of November, Plaza Hotel, New York City, Lyndall Hobbs accompanied Pacino, but their relationship didn't last too much longer. Unsurprisingly, considering Penelope Ann Miller's talking loads of shit in People magazine.
Yeah, that's going to happen. Yeah.
And also, it may be something to do with the fact that Miller showed a reporter on the night a picture of her and Pacino visiting her aunt and uncle for proof.
No way.
Yeah.
What on earth?
Fucking hell.
Steady on, Penny.
Maybe she is evil.
Yeah, outrageous behaviour. The film went on general release November 12th to middling to positive reviews and underwhelming box office receipts. On a budget of $30 million, it returned just over double, $64 million. From a critical point of view, Empire gave it 5 out of 5. said an early scene in a pool room as a drug deal goes wrong, while Pacino performs a trick shot, is absolute model of suspense. And the final chase through the New York subway to Grand Central Station chews your nerves for nearly 15 minutes of near misses and shocks before the actual violence.
Yeah.
Disappointingly, Chicago Reader said, if Brian De Palma has made a duller movie than this 144-minute snooze fest, I count myself fortunate to have missed it.
Wow. I mean, it's anything but a snooze fest, let's be honest.
It's not a snooze fest.
Definitely not that.
They go on. Carlito's Way slugs its way through almost 70 years of gangster movie cliches and juiceless performances to arrive at a set-piece climax in Grand Central Station that isn't worth the wait.
Oh.
Dearie me.
Read with such vitriol and spite.
Yeah.
Bastards.
I disagree.
100%.
Finally, Roger Ebert out of 4. What do you think, fellas?
I'm going to say 4. Big 4.
I reckon 3. Thought it was maybe too long or something.
Okay, right. Wow. Well, split the difference. It was 3.5 out of 4.
Okay.
Right.
He said 2 of the set pieces in the film are among De Palma's best work. Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
One involves an insane scheme by the lawyer to rescue a hood from Rikers Island prison barge.
Yep.
The other is a cat and mouse chase leading to a shootout in Grand Central Station.
Yep.
Right, fair enough.
All the reviews were about the set pieces.
Yes, well, I mean,
yes,
they will be.
we loved it. They stand out.
Understandable.
And now it has 84% on Rotten Tomatoes and a high score of 7.9 out of 10 on IMDb. Pretty good.
Big numbers.
That is. That is.
There were no Oscar nominations to speak of, but Sean Penn and Penelope Ann Miller were both nominated in the supporting acting categories at the Golden Globes that year.
Yeah.
They lost out to Tommy Lee Jones for The Fugitive and Winona Ryder for Age of Innocence.
Oh, okay.
Right.
A fair one, really.
A fair one, but yeah, not as an impactful performance, though, is it really, Age of Innocence? Or an impactful film?
Well, that's true enough, yeah. Give it like 31 years worth of dust to settle.
Yeah, you can finally make that decision, yeah.
So underwhelming on all fronts for Carlito's Way, I suppose, but its reputation has grown over time. And in their review of 90 Cinema, noted French cinema magazine Cahiers de Cinema named Carlito's Way the best film of the 1990s.
Wow.
Can't argue with that.
No, you can't. You can't argue with how...
French they are.
How French that is. I mean, have they ever appeared on an episode ever?
Of course they have. I mean, that is highbrow stuff.
Oh, I mean, that's
Tarantino
you
loves
all
them,
over,
doesn't he?
though, isn't it? I mean,
Tarantino, yeah, that's me all over highbrow stuff. Abel Ferrara movies, 70s horror.
Yeah, you love that stuff.
Sleepaway Camp.
Yeah.
Sleepaway Camp.
Really highbrow.
Sequels and influence.
Let's quickly gloss over the ill-fated and half-baked prequel to Carlito's Way. Some people have never even heard of it.
I'm not surprised.
Westy's one of them.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
A limited cinema release preceded a straight-to-DVD outing for Carlito's Way Rise to Power in 2005, charting Carlito's rise through the criminal underworld as a younger man and based on Edwin Torres' first novel called Carlito's Way. Jay Fernandez stars as Carlito, and there's pretty impressive supporting cast, including the big man Mario Van Peebles, Burt Young, Giancarlo Esposito, and, oddly, Luis Guzman in a completely different role to Pachanga.
Right. The only reason you watched it then.
No, he plays this off-the-wall hitman with an insane coke problem.
Okay. Vest? Still a vest?
Still vest, obviously.
Of course.
Sounds like a stretch for him, doesn't it?
Vest and a sheepskin coat.
Yeah. A real stretch.
By any chance, have you seen this film, fellas?
Absolutely not.
Just heard of it now.
Oh, okay. Wow. Oh, so that's true. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's up to me then to give you a synopsis and a recommend or not, I suppose.
Okay, fair enough. When was the first time you watched this?
Last week.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you need to say.
Thank you.
I mean, it's got a bad reputation and 33% on Rotten Tomatoes. Directed by Michael Bregman, who produced the original. I mean, it's pretty bloody awful. With no identity or class or style. Bregman tries to be De Palma, but falls laughably short.
Yeah, many people do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true enough.
Yeah.
It's only on for 90 minutes, which is crazy.
It's right up your street, though, isn't it?
Sloppy. It is. It was appealing when I saw it, to be honest.
That's a very quick rise.
It's really
90 minutes.
Rise.
Yeah.
It
Really
is
rapid,
through the
like-
criminal underworld.
Shittest souffle ever.
Yeah.
And I was checking my watch a few times when I was going through it, even though it was only 90 minutes. It's just very unremarkable. The tone's confusing. And at the end, it plays out like a cross between Get Shorty and Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. It's
Oh,
quite
wow.
playful. Yeah, it's weird. The only reason really to watch it is for, obviously, Luis Guzman, who shows up in the last 30 minutes and he does light the screen up. Other than that, I wouldn't bother.
Last 30 minutes. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, not worth my time. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So other than obviously Carlito's Way Rise to Power, in the years since Carlito's Way's release, where have you seen its influence? What do you think its legacy is?
I think mainly its legacy or its influence has landed with Pacino and his delivery and his performances since this film, especially in the likes of Heat, where he's just a lot more over the top. I think this is one where he's kind of just got the character and just went, right, well, I can kind of roll with what I'm doing now. I've got an Oscar, so here I go. You know, and it kind of feels like he's let loose a little bit more. Yeah, it's a lot of scenery chewing since this. There's a lot of performances that have been hit and miss. And I think this was his last real performance where he had that level of grounding. I don't think De Palma's done much else at all to this standard since.
No,
I think he's poured a lot into this, where his cup's pretty much empty for the rest of his career. Like, what else is he going to do? You know, so there's a lot gone into this, and I think that's its legacy, is that it's kind of the last pouring of some really, really great talents. So its legacy stands with itself, I think, and it's just it can't be repeated.
Yes, certainly can't. Well, one of the influences from the film came from within the criminal underworld. The character of Benny Blanco was obviously successful in making its way into popular culture, and in the years after the film's release, bags of heroin called Benny Blanco made their way onto the streets of New York.
Wow. Right. Wow.
Yeah. Now, as insensitive as it sounds, if I were to ever take up H, this kind of marketing would push me straight over the edge.
If you were to get onto the brown.
Yeah.
It's really good advertising.
Yeah, it is. That's some PR work right there.
It really is. Like the new Big Mac. I'm having that.
Big smack.
The Big Smack. Lovely.
Oh, yes, Matt. I love it.
Yes. Very good.
So, what about you, Matt? Influence, legacy?
I think influence and legacy, to go influence first, mentioned a couple of times, but definitely Boogie Nights.
Yes,
A
without
lot
doubt.
of this, I think, is in Thomas Anderson's DNA for that film in particular.
Yeah.
And then legacy, I think I would just agree a lot with what Westy said. I think this is one of the last great films from De Palma. I mean, he does this, then Mission Impossible, and then it's really fallen off a curve.
Completely gone after this.
Quality-wise. And then, one of the last great performances from Pacino. It is very patchy for him after this as well.
Yeah, agreed. So no real obvious influence from Carlito's Way, unlike Scarface. But when all said and done in De Palma's career, this one will likely stand head and shoulders above most, maybe even all, in his filmography.
Yes, agreed.
All the right movies ranking.
The legendary ATRM ranking, as legendary as Carlito and Rolando Rivas. This is where we summarize and give the film a score out of 10. And I'm going to take this first. I said at the start, and have reinforced throughout, there are a number of flaws in Carlito's Way.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, you've heard me going on and on about how much I love De Palma's work here. And I think he does elevate the medium in some scenes to artwork for me. That's big words. I understand that. And maybe not echoed by everybody.
No, that's okay.
The setting, the music, the cast, the aesthetic, I love it all. Give me a film made like this every day of the week with care and attention, hard work, confidence, and De Palma's flair. And I think he was a filmmaker at the top of his game here, and it really shows how much he was in love with this story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those films that no matter its failings, it's just under my skin and always will be. So I'm taking off the minimum I can and giving Carlito's Way 9.5 out of 10.
Okay.
Yes.
Surprising.
Yes.
First layer of the onion taken off. That's it.
Just one.
Just
there are
one layer.
many layers under
Many
that.
layers. Yeah.
And Westy, what about you? Score and summary, Carlito's Way?
Yeah, and I've said all the way through that you know, it's one of them films that it's not a regular for me. It's one that I never really came back to. I do have issues with it, but I just cannot deny the technique that has gone into this, the effort that's gone into this, the love that's gone into this. There's a lot of attention to detail, and it really does work, but I don't know if it works on every single level. I think there is a lot of mixed tone. It doesn't quite know where it wants to be at some points. And just because it's not something that I regularly visit doesn't mean that it's a bad film. It doesn't mean that it's something that I should, you know, not see again. And I will definitely check it out, just basically based on your love for it, Luke, to be honest, which has been lovely. Such a wonderful thing to hear. And it's when you're so effervescent about a film and you're so in love with something that makes sense and it lands on all the levels for you, then there must be something there. There's got to be something there. And it's one of them films where you just go, yeah, well, it's a great, great film. And the only letdown is that it's compared to other films in that genre, and maybe it doesn't want to be, and it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
And it is a joy to watch, but at the same time, I do feel a little bit let down by it. So I'm going to take off a few more layers than you have because I still need to build them layers up. So for me, it's a solid 8 on 10.
Solid 8 on 10. You can't go wrong with that score, Westy. And what about you, Matt?
It's a great film, and I did make the joke at the top about not watching this since it was in double feature, but after watching it a few times for this, it is one I think, I can see myself genuinely going back to it more now and, you know, having that occasion where I think, you know what, I fancy watching Carlito's Way now. Pacino is on top form, maybe the last time he was, and De Palma is operating on such an incredible level of detail and style. That's quite a thing to behold at times, some of these sequences, and lots of really colourful supporting performances as well that bring a lot of humour to the film. So is there anything in the debit column? I think so. I think, like a lot of these films, the female supporting performances are very much a lesser standard of writing, and it's not so much Penelope Ann Miller's fault, but she is so badly miscast in this, and pretty much everything to do with her character doesn't work. Not her fault, but that is the big flaw in the film for me. And it does have to lose points for You Are So Beautiful as well. So all in all, comes out in 8.5.
To me.
Can't you see?
No, that's a solid score as well, Matt. 8.5, very nice. A big score for a big film. And our fourth and final score comes from our lively followers on X.
Okay.
Where there is historically a lot of love for this film. So here's a snapshot of comments before we reveal the final score.
Okay.
Graham at Clantastic said, very underrated thriller with Pacino on top form and Sean Penn in what should have been an Oscar contention supporting role.
It's fair enough.
The film that led to anyone named Benjamin suddenly being called Benny Blank or from the Bronx in a fake Hispanic accent. Yeah, I can go along with that, Graham.
Yeah, definitely. 100%, yeah.
Ronald Voigt at Ronald Voigt 4 said, always thought this should have been Godfather 3, rated at 10.
Wow.
Well, fair
very
enough.
Strong.
Yeah,
very strong.
See that?
Carolina Charles at Carolina Charles said, best screenplay in a De Palma film, terrific all-round cast, amazing set pieces. Hot take, I think it should have taken all the Fugitives Oscar nominations that year, plus director.
Wow. Huge opinion.
Okay.
A solid argument, I would say, Charles. One that I would echo.
Yeah.
And finally, from Peter Roger Sutcliffe, at Sutcliffe8547, he said, it's got our boy Luis Guzman in, which immediately makes it a classic. 9.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. That's
yes,
all you need.
Agreed,
Sometimes
Peter.
that's all you need. Yeah.
So nothing really in the way of negatives on X, to be honest, in the comments. What do you think it averaged out of 10, chaps?
Well, it's got to be high up, hasn't it? I would say 9.5.
Yeah, if there's literally no negatives, I'll go 9.
Oh, well, I've lulled her into a false sense of security there. It came out with a surprisingly low 8 out of 10.
Oh,
really?
Obviously, the silent majority didn't feel the need to comment.
No.
Well, yeah. Or you've just ignored all the negative comments and just put the positive ones in.
Delete, block.
Yeah, block.
Nope.
Nope.
So with all of our scores combined, that leaves Carlito's Way with a 34 out of 40. Go to alltherightmovies.com/leaderboard to see how it fares against the vast well of films that we've talked about on the show, coming up to 100 episodes.
Wow.
Join us next time on All the Right Movies when John, Matt and Westy are joining the military of the future as they go behind the scenes on Starship Troopers, a satirical extravaganza. Excited for that one, chaps?
Oh, it's war. We're going to war.
Very much. It'll be very funny.
100%.
You know,
it's going to be great.
Finally get to talk about Casper Van Dien. I mean...
Oh, God. We've been waiting for it for almost 100 episodes, Matt.
You know.
Yeah. And it's the only one we can.
Yeah.
For our Director's Chair tier patrons, last week saw the release of the latest episode of Double Feature. For the first time in our history, we talked about Sam Raimi and 2 of his classic horror comedies, Evil Dead 2 and Drag Me to Hell. And that was one hell of a show, no mistake.
It was.
Yes, big fun.
So for access to that and all of our podcasts, sign up to become an ATRM patron at patreon.com/alltherightmovies. Alternatively, you can get access to all of our podcasts at podbean.com. And if it's just our classic podcast archive that you're looking for, subscribe at Apple Podcasts. A lot of options there. Take one if you can.
Absolutely.
Oh, and you can buy our podcasts individually on our website, alltherightmovies.com as well.
Yes.
We're everywhere.
Yeah.
So many options. No excuses.
Never. And please keep up to date with us on social media. On X, we are at ATRightMovies. We post every day, all day, behind the scenes interviews, photos, outtakes, as well as our now famous making of movie threads. Like our podcast, all of our thread info comes directly from the cast and crew or is corroborated by at least 3 sources. So keep checking back daily for more amazing content.
Yes, please
Careful.
do.
Also, on Instagram and threads, we are at all_right_movies. On TikTok, we are at all_the_right_movies. Join our Facebook group where there's loads of great guys and gals with some lively movie discussions.
Yeah, definitely.
We are on YouTube as well. Watch our videos to see our smiling faces. And if you could comment, like our vids, and subscribe to our channel, that would be much appreciated. That's youtube.com/alltherightmovies.
Very good.
Yeah.
And if you love the show and love what we're doing on the podcast generally, and why wouldn't you, please spare a bit of time to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. 5 stars only.
Yes, please.
It's so much easier to
Yeah.
give 5 stars, isn't it?
Yeah.
5
You don't
stars
have
is
to
the
write
best.
anything.
No.
Just type. Just press 5 stars. That's
Click 5 and then you're
it.
done.
Yeah. Would know your opinion.
Yeah.
Would know you appreciate it. That's
yeah,
all we need.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. Thank you.
If you didn't like the show, don't bother with the rating. That's
No.
as simple as
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
There's the rules.
Yeah.
Just send us an email or don't.
Yeah.
Don't bother.
I mean,
Yeah,
send it
actually,
before
we'll-
read it.
Send it if you want.
It's not getting read.
Straight in the junk mail.
No. And our website, the ATRM hub, is alltherightmovies.com. A lot of bits, a lot of ATRM bits to keep you busy.
There is.
Absolutely.
And that is a wrap. I think this show puts us in the history books, and now it's last call for drinks, bars closing down, sun's up. Tide, baby. Tide.
Heartbreaker, that. Such a heartbreaker.
It is. Thanks, everyone. Come back in 2 weeks for Starship Troopers.
Yes. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening.
I'm off to dance in silhouette.